Welcome to HP Fanfiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. Knowing that they had months of hard work ahead of them, the four friends were even more determined to enjoy Barchoke's party that night. The guest of honor was also thrilled to be spending his special day with his children and their extended family. The present that seemed to capture his heart, though, was by no means the most expensive. Little Danielle Dugan had raced ahead of her parents to hug Barchoke and wish him a happy birthday. He almost didn't need to open the present she'd gotten him, since Danielle began describing it in great detail before her mother even handed the gift over for unwrapping. "I did a drawing of me and you, Mummy. Got me a frame and we put the drawing in it. Mummy did help me a little." Barchoke could see the lovely ornate picture frame was really his gift. What it contained, though, was way more precious to the goblin. Here was a child's drawing, like the ones drawn by children all over the world since time immemorial. This one, though, featured the little girl who'd produced the drawing holding hands with her friend Barchoke. It was never going to win any prizes in an art competition, but to the goblin portrayed in the picture it was priceless. "Mummy helped me with the writing. I did the kisses, though." It was indeed clear she'd been helped with the writing. The sentiment, however, was pure Danielle. "To my friend, Barchoke. Happy birthday. Love, Danielle." "This is wonderful, Danielle. Thank you so much. I shall hang it in my office so everyone can see it and know that we are friends." That just made both their evenings. All three of the trio involved in today's tasks had thanked their parents profusely for frightening off the government man so they didn't have to speak to him. Harry was beginning to think he might have made a mistake, though, by putting on such a show. The trio dedicated their efforts to Barchoke, but those same efforts were in danger of overshadowing his birthday. Luna and Colin had a tiff over it. Apparently he wasn't too happy. His girlfriend had known they were enemies and didn't tell him. Luna had replied that it wasn't her secret to tell, and she was now waiting to see how long her boyfriend was going to sulk for. Ewan, Dennis and Orla were in total awe of the trio. Ewan asking if Neville could do that too was a question that had to be quickly dealt with. If Neville could do that, he would be breaking the law, since he's not registered. Harry didn't need to say any more. These three were quick enough to work the rest out for themselves. The friends then found themselves being joined by a rather grumpy Sapphire. "It's bad enough some of the younger ones are looking at you four in awe. My own bloody family, though, are doing the same thing to me. You'd think they didn't know who I was. First one of them to ask for my autograph is getting a smack around the head." This resulted in laughter, along with Draco and Pansy joining the group. "I was surprised you gave that secret away today. That's bound to make its way back to Voldemort." Draco's comments just saw Harry shrug his shoulders. "Of our forms, Saber is probably the most dangerous. Actually, Neville can make a quite compelling case for Padma being the most dangerous of us in her human form too. But that's another matter. If you were getting attacked by a hawk, what would you do?" This had Draco thinking. "Well, that would depend on how much damage I wanted to do. Something like a flame curse would be pretty effective, though. When you think about it a little more, you'll see you're spoiled for choice. Our forms are handy for surveillance and travel. In any magical fight, they quickly become liabilities. Yes, I'm certainly mobile as Swift, but I can't shield, and activating my armor reduces my speed to a point where I would be easily picked off. Voldemort, though, will soon be factoring that ability into his plans, an ability I have no intention of using when we face each other. Pansy was certainly enough of a Slytherin to appreciate those tactics. He'll be prepared for you to use that, and probably surprised when you don't." This saw Harry nodding. He'll also be preparing a defense against the shotgun, something else we won't be using. Even if this only buys us a couple of seconds where it sees him hesitate, those seconds could be priceless. A droll voice came from behind Harry. "A very astute analysis, Centurion. One I'm sure you don't want overheard. I trust everyone in this room, Potions Master Snape, otherwise they wouldn't be here. I know you were quite a bit away from the stadium today, but I was wondering what you made of Dumbledore's outburst. Albus always thinks he knows more than everyone else. Can I assume, since Amelia so effectively destroyed his argument, that incident was planned? A nod was Harry's only answer, but Hermione elaborated further. We have some very clever people helping us, Professor. You are certainly included in that group. I hate to think the mess we would make of it if we tried this alone. Never gonna happen? This was practically growled out by Neville, earning him a kiss from Padma. It had been hard for him to sit there today, waiting to see what would unfold. Without the threat of Voldemort gate-crashing, Neville would have been sitting back and laughing with the rest of their friends who were in on the Animagi secret. His mate had no idea just how sexy she looked, standing on the edge of the astronomy tower before fearlessly diving off. Her transformation into Saber had the stadium going crazy, and Neville's chest swelling with pride. He had noticed some of the older wizards practically drooling over Padma, but Neville wasn't worried in the slightest. Padma herself would kick their asses if any dared make a move or suggestion she considered inappropriate. His mate was one scary witch when she wanted to be. Hermione finally got a chance to dance with their father. How has your birthday been? Since this is the very first birthday that I've ever gotten the chance to dance with my daughter at, I would have to say it's my best ever. Thank you so much for helping arrange this. Oh, I can't accept any thanks. Since this was a purely selfish act on my part, I wanted to be with you on your special day. I know it's something Harry really wanted too. They looked over to where Harry was sitting beside his godfather. Both had a baby on their knee. Those two are more alike than would seem possible. This drew a smile from Barchoke. Perhaps it's because both want the same things from life, things they perhaps thought they would never have. It was a very fortunate day for my son when he met you on that train. Because of you, all his dreams are coming true. Harry features heavily in my dreams too, Father. That's why I could never lose him, and will be at his side in this fight. The nation would know when she and Harry completed their bond. Hermione's status would change within Gringotts. She was trying to lay the groundworks here so their father wouldn't be shocked when it happened. The wise, now 60-year-old goblin managed to surprise his daughter. I couldn't imagine you allowing him to fight alone, even though that's probably what he was hoping for. Part of him knows he needs you, Padma. Neville and Tonks with him. Another part, however, hates the very thought that he's putting you four in danger. I assumed it would appear correctly that you will complete your bond before the final task. Dan and Emma have made the same assumption. Accepting you were old enough to face Voldemort was a lot harder than something we all knew was going to be in your future anyway. You won't get any grief from there either over this. This news had tears welling in the corners of Hermione's eyes. It's your birthday. You're not supposed to be the one handing out presents today. That is such a precious gift. We really don't want to deceive anyone with this. We will be going to the island the weekend before the final task. Remus and Tonks will be there too, along with Padma and Neville. Barchoke could feel his daughter trembling as she said that. It was time to put her mind to rest. These four certainly had enough to worry about without adding something else to their burden. Again, not something unexpected. All the parents involved seem to be of the opinion that this is justifiable, considering what else you are facing. Providing you don't then expect to be living as married couples after that. I think all concerned will be happy to pretend it didn't happen. Personally, as long as you two come back to me after the fight, you can live your lives whatever way you want. Just come back to us. That is all that matters. Hermione had stopped dancing and was now just standing there hugging the wonderful person that she was proud to call father. Barchoke thought that was simply the best birthday present he could ever have. The Hogsmeade weekend was only 2 weeks later. People were already noticing the subtle changes though, even in those 2 weeks. The four friends were already a pretty driven bunch, but that intensity had gone up a few notches. As their training had intensified and gotten more specialized, they were forced to exclude Victor and Fleur from these lessons. Both champions still trained with them every morning, having clearly felt the benefits during the second task, but now only participated on a Sunday with Roger, Cedric and the Weasley twins. The Hogsmeade weekend again saw Harry and Tonks taking charge of security for the students' visit. Neville, Padma and Hermione were once more riding shotgun on Crow's marauders. Since Valentine's Day fell on the Sunday, Harry and Tonks were worried that some couples might try to slip away for some alone time. There had been no Death Eater activity, but neither wanted to offer up any easy targets. Luna and Colin stuck with the group. Both were very proud of now being Marauder trainers. With that position, though, came certain responsibilities. They got to spend the day together walking around Hogsmeade in the company of friends while holding hands. The young couple were happy with that. Hermione didn't get to see Harry until their now customary walk back to the castle, the head count telling them everyone would soon be safely back inside Hogwarts. The four friends were going to have a quiet dinner together in the room tonight. Barchoke's revelations to Hermione, if anything, had brought the two couples even closer. Harry was making his way downstairs to meet Hermione and Padma in the Ravenclaw common room when he found himself faced with a nervous Roger, who'd clearly been waiting on him. "Harry, I don't know what's the matter, but clearly something is wrong. If we've done something." "Oh shit. Sorry, Roger. No one has done anything. It's just something we're dealing with at the moment. Our new training is brutal, and it would seem we've let some of that intensity spill over. We should get used to it in a few more weeks. If you're sure that's all it is. A few of us were just worried about you four." "We're fine, Roger, but there is something you can help us with." "Anything, Harry?" "Well, you know the four of us are getting married next summer. Being the organized people that they are, Hermione and Padma have already chosen their bridesmaids. With the way things are progressing between Parvati and Blaise, it's looking like he'll be part of the wedding party too, but leaves Neville and I having to find one each. Would you be my best man, Roger?" It was a stunned Roger who could do no more than state the blindingly obvious. "You want me to be your best man? I don't think you'll mind too much if I told you Neville would have been my first choice. Since he'll now be a groom that day too, yours was the next name I thought of. You've been a friend to us since we first sat at the Ravenclaw table. We hope to continue that friendship for many years to come. So, will you do it?" "Harry, I'd be honored." A firm handshake of thanks later, and Harry was on his way, leaving behind a Roger who'd gone from being nervous to utterly bewildered. This bewildered version finally caught up with his girlfriend at the entrance to the Great Hall. "Are you feeling poorly, Roger? You seem, how do you say, distracted. Did you talk with Harry? Is that what is wrong?" A quick kiss of greeting settled Fleur down and allowed Roger to lead her over to the Ravenclaw table. "There is nothing wrong with me or Harry, love. It's just their new training that has them acting a bit different. Harry just asked me something that totally blew me away. He wants me to be best man at his wedding." A happy squeal from Fleur alerted everyone that something was going on. She didn't care, though. She knew how much her boyfriend valued Harry's friendship. To see that Harry valued his just as much would easily account for Roger's current dazed expression. Fleur had also since learned it had been Harry's suggestion that Roger should ask her out, something they were both pretty happy about. Roger's good news was soon spreading throughout the hall, along with his explanation on why the four friends had seemed so distant lately. They all reached the same conclusion. There couldn't be too much wrong if they were planning for their weddings. Harry was currently telling the other three what had happened, leaving Neville shrugging his shoulders. "I was originally thinking Colin might be a good choice. Seeing how he reacted after the second task has left me thinking I'd be better waiting a while. If he and Luna weren't still together next year, it could get really awkward, and that's the last thing we need. If not Colin, I was thinking of Cedric or Draco." All agreed with his thinking, although Padma had another concern. "How did our friends pick up on this so quickly? I wasn't even aware we were acting differently." "It's the bloody training. We've spent the last 3.5 years learning to fight. Now they won't let us. I know Amelia means well, but I think we stand a better chance of pulling this off if we stick to what we're good at. Shielding and dodging until they pull those wards down might sound right to them. It just doesn't feel right to us." A kiss from Harry soon had Hermione feeling a lot better, that and his reminder that this was a date, so no more talk of unpleasant things. They would be surprised to discover they had an unlikely champion of their cause. Amelia had been badgered until she had to come and see for herself. She was standing watching this and simply couldn't see anything wrong. The three sworn to secrecy auras were firing curses at their opponents and hitting nothing but the occasional shield. Mad-Eye, I just don't see what the problem is here. The plan is working perfectly. They survive until we pull down the wards, and then we'll deal with those bastards. Amelia, you know there's no such beast as the perfect plan. It's going well, because none of them are hit. When one of them goes down, the whole thing crumbles. You're the one who told me about the bond between this lot and how it was their main strength. That strength becomes a weakness when one of them goes down. They would literally do anything to help each other. She could just imagine the rest of them standing over whoever fell, taking whatever curses came their way in an effort to protect the downed friend. What are you suggesting, Alistair? Let them loose, release the shackles this strategy puts them under, and allow them to do what they are simply brilliant at. At least let me show you what I mean. Since she was already here, Amelia didn't have a problem with that. A signal to Shaq saw him call a 5-minute break. Mad-Eye intended to use those 5 minutes constructively. He headed straight for the defending group to have a quiet word. I can see none of you are really happy with this strategy. Personally, I agree with you. The best way to survive a fight is to take the other bastard out as quickly as you can. Something you lot have been training at since you were wee firsties. How about we show Amelia just what you're capable of? That put smiles on their faces as Mad-Eye made his way back to Amelia. The 5 had some planning of their own to do. As Shaq called fight, a blitzkrieg of magic hit the 3 unsuspecting auras. One was taken out immediately, the other 2 were swiftly maneuvered into positions where they couldn't help each other and soon succumbed. Mad-Eye shoved his stopwatch under Amelia's nose. It was stopped at 21 seconds. The auras weren't prepared. You didn't tell them the rules had changed. Amelia, there are no rules in a fight. Voldemort is only expecting Crow, so he's in for a surprise too. I thought that was a fair test. One those 5 just passed with flying colors. It's hardly a fair test comparing 3 auras to what they're really up against. I'll give you that one, Amelia. What about me, you and Shaq? Do you think that would be a fairer comparison, and we would know what to expect from these 5? This was too important. She simply had to get this right, even if it meant facing the 5 of them in combat. Amelia nodded her agreement before getting ready to fight. Mad-Eye handed his stopwatch to one of the auras, who would now be sitting in the shielded area before deliberately picking a fight with their 5 opponents. Now, children, let's see how you fare against some real opposition. Remember, I still owe you lot an ass-kicking from way back. He was deliberately winding them up so they would come at them with everything they had. Oh, and Crow, you won't learn anything letting this room do your fighting for you. You have to admit one thing though, taking Dumbledore down like that, it was funny. As Mad-Eye laughed at that, his own lack of constant vigilance then came back to haunt him. A starburst charm sent a wave of pain directly to his brain as his artificial eye couldn't adjust quickly enough to cut out the blindingly bright flash of light. His wand was in his hand, and he had his strongest shield up. It was all to no avail. A golden Harry had raced over and physically swept the legs from under him before a stunner put Master Aura Moody out of the fight. Amelia felt as if she was fighting for her life. Tonks, Harry and Hermione were barely giving her time to breathe, far less do much else than try to survive the onslaught. She thought the odds had been evened slightly when one of her curses got through Hermione's magical shields, only for her goblin one to deflect that curse away. That the girl had the presence of mind to not only do this in the middle of a fight, but also deliberately deflect that curse at Shaq was really frightening. That Amelia's own curse distracted Shaq enough for Neville to then take him down meant the fight was as good as over, their far superior numbers meaning Amelia soon joined her 2 colleagues on the floor. After being revived and helped to a seat, Amelia once more found a certain stopwatch filling her vision. Mad-Eye was not happy. 28 seconds. They fucking took the 3 of us down in 28 seconds. If I didn't know how quickly they got me, I would think these 3 were taking the piss to try and make themselves look good. The 3 auras Mad-Eye was indicating toward didn't take any offense at his remarks. They were still too shocked at how quickly that had been over. Mad-Eye was right though, this lent some credibility to what they had previously considered an abysmal showing. The 3 most powerful auras at the Ministry had only lasted 7 seconds longer. Mad-Eye pushed home his advantage. Yes, we will keep practicing their riveting, we would do that anyway, but we need to allow them the freedom of being able to slip the leash and attack too. Another few weeks of this, and I'm willing to bet the Centurion here would have taken that decision out of our hands. Not surprised the scarred old Auror had figured that out, Harry thought he might as well confirm his suspicions. Amelia, we really appreciate everything you're doing to keep us safe, but we will be the ones in there. These 4 will be my responsibility. I have to make the decisions that will hopefully see us all safely home. We need to use the time we have to get Tonks fully integrated into our group, so she knows instinctively exactly what we're going to do in any given situation. Having just had her arse effectively handed to her, Amelia couldn't fault their logic or arguments. She also knew in any real fight with this group, goblin steel would also be used. Harry, you have any help the Ministry are able to give? I know that, on the day, you will all do your best to look out for each other. That's really the most important thing here. Amelia, on the night they attacked your home, none of these 3 really saw how we fight. We have spent the last few years developing this method of fighting, and made damn sure no one outside those we trust have ever seen it. This will be our surprise for Voldemort. We'd rather pin our hopes on this than try to evade while you pull the wards down. Amelia could see the other 4 agreed with this, as did Mad-Eye and Shaq. Harry, though, had more to say. The area we have to fight in will be determined by whatever they ward. Without a building or structure to tie those wards to, increasing the area weakens the wards. We think this fight might take place in an area not much bigger than the pit. Remember, those 3 are only expecting me, and certainly won't want to give me anything to take shelter behind. We need to use everything we have to gain any advantage. This is what we have. All 6 of the Aurors who had faced them that morning couldn't really argue against any of that. Amelia, though, had one last card to play. She handed Neville and Padma black dragon skin wallets. Both opened them to find freshly minted special aura badges inside. This is to provide you both with a degree of protection. As head of the DMLA, you are hereby authorized to do whatever is necessary to survive this battle. There certainly won't be receiving any censure from the Ministry. This just makes it official and stops anyone else interfering. She then turned her attention to Hermione. There is certainly a badge available for you too. We just weren't sure what the protocol is for offering one to the mate of a Centurion. Harry really appreciated the gesture but was quick to point out it wasn't really necessary in Hermione's case. As my mate Hermione is classed as a citizen of the nation, there will be no need for a badge, unless she wants one. The lady in question took a moment to think the offer over. In Goblin society, females can't be warriors. This would actually legitimize my right to fight by Harry's side in that community's minds. I'm also pretty sure there has never been a goblin aura before. A smile from Harry encouraged Amelia to remove a 3rd wallet. Hermione Granger was now a special operative within the Auror department too. The entire Great Hall couldn't miss that it was a far happier group of 4 who sat down to lunch that Thursday. Harry answered Roger before he could even ask his question. I told you we would get it sorted. Dolores was desperate. Bluffing with the crazy bitch Lestrange wasn't her idea of fun or excitement. While Rookwood was reading the Prophet's report of the 2nd task, his girlfriend wanted to know how Dolores was going to accomplish hers. I still have some friends in the Ministry. They have no idea what I'm involved in but know and share my views on Crow and the Beasts. He's an animagi. It says here his form is a bird. Crow is actually a swift, a name he lived up to. As a bird, he's lightning fast and far more maneuverable than any broom. There's a book on those birds sitting in the kitchen. I thought our master would want all the information he could get. Anything to see Crow dead. Both Death Eaters could see how much Dolores wanted that to happen. They had just given her the means to do so. Place that on the cup. A sticking charm should do. You activate the portkey using the phrase written on the parchment. It will only work for Crow. Touching the cup will bring him to us. Bella had grabbed the newspaper out of her mate's hands. The minute he mentioned Crow was an animagus. We were also going to get you to hamper the other 2 champions. It would appear that won't be necessary. Despite you marking him down, everyone recognizes he's won both tasks so far. The 3rd task is always to retrieve the cup from wherever they place it, and through whatever obstacles are in the way. Touching that cup will be the last thing he ever does. His moment of it will soon see him die. We'll send his body back to his little mudblood mate. The press are sure to print pictures of her crying over it. That is an issue of the Prophet we certainly want you to get a copy of for us." Imagining that tearful scene was enough to make Dolores smile. She would certainly be buying a few copies of that issue. Behind the bedroom curtain, a certain beetle was imagining a completely different headline, one she would take great pleasure in writing. Rita Skeeter would get to tell the entire story of Voldemort's downfall, and the part Dumbledore and Umbridge played in it. Rita now knew enough about goblin culture to understand that, should anything happen to any of the 4 teens fighting Voldemort, neither Dolores nor Dumbledore would see Azkaban. Director Ragnarok would demand they were both fed to the Gringotts dragons, and there wouldn't be a voice raised in magical Britain against that being allowed to happen. Minister Fudge would probably personally hand them over to Gringotts. Things at Hogwarts soon settled back into a routine for the 4 friends, a routine that saw some of their family visit the Blacks either Saturday or Sunday of every weekend. The family were determined to support their children in the lead-up to the final task. Either the Longbottoms, Grangers, Patils or Barchoke were inside Hogwarts once a week to see the 4 as they took their usual lesson with Sirius. It was a very proud Neville who showed his mum and dad their new Aurora badges. The final task had been unofficially set for the 24th of June, meaning they would be leaving for the island after potions on Friday the 18th. Thanks to Hermione's plan, this was the date that was at the forefront of the 4 teenagers' minds. The only day they allocated themselves off training was the 2nd of May, Padma and Parvati's birthday. Smarta and Ramrao were the visitors that Sunday, and had brought some news that would take the 4's minds off what they would be facing for a while. "Parvati, I've been contacted by the Zabini family concerning a betrothal between you and their son. I have the forms here, only needing my signature, and I understand Blaise was hoping you would be wearing his family's ring to your birthday party tonight. The choice, though, is yours to make." Smita now had her arm around Parvati's shoulder, offering support and confirming what her husband had just said. "The decision is yours to make. If you don't want this, or even think you need more time to make your mind up, we'll support you." "Mum, Dad, I want this. Blaise has been fantastic with me, standing by me while I eventually grew up. He's sweet, kind, and handsome. What more could I want? I notice you didn't mention love in there. Was that deliberate? I really like Blaise, Mum, more than any boy I've ever met. I think we could be really good together, and I would be satisfied with that. I can see us being happy together for the rest of our lives. Whether that's love, I don't know, and honestly don't really care. I almost ruined my life with that romantic rubbish. Not any longer. Blaise is now my best friend, and becoming so much more. I took my sister's advice, and she was right." Tears began running down Parvati's cheeks at that. Suddenly she was out her seat and throwing herself at Padma. She was clinging to her twin while trying to talk through her sobs. "You're going to be my bridesmaid. You need to be there. I need you to be there. Promise me you'll be there. Pev, I promise I will do everything in my power to be there, and these 3 will be helping me keep that promise." She managed to get her crying back under some control. Parvati was in danger of setting a few people off. "I know you will, Padma. You 4 have your own weddings to look forward to as well. It's just so hard sitting here and not being able to help." Sirius practically growled his response to that. "You are not alone in feeling like that, Parvati. We're all sharing that pain." This confused the 4, though Padma as usual was quickest with her answer. "You are helping us immensely. Just knowing we have everyone's support means so much to us, and seeing some of our parents every weekend was a brilliant idea. Our family keeps growing. I'm going to have another brother, and we're all happy about that. We may have the strangest family in the world, but it's also the greatest." Harry's smile at that lit up the room. They all knew who Padma had already considered her brother, something a certain centurion was ecstatic about. His sister wasn't quite finished yet, though. "Kissing my betrothed as a 15-year-old is the best feeling in the world, Pav. Just wait until you try it." She was currently sitting next to her twin, with Neville on Padma's other side. This was just too good a chance to pass up, though. Parvati effortlessly slid onto Neville's lap and had both arms around his neck. "Well, Padma, if you insist." Parvati leaned into a clearly panicking Neville and gave him a sisterly kiss on the cheek. Once again Hermione noticed the similarities between her mate and his godfather. It was hard not to, since both were laughing so hard they had slipped off their chairs and onto the floor. Every time they looked in Neville or Padma's direction, their laughter would kick off anew. Henrika had a giggling Astrid on her knee. "Your daddy is such a silly wizard, isn't he, my darling?" This increased her giggling before the entire room heard what came next. Dada, Sirius had stopped laughing. His smile, though, was wide and one of wonder. Astrid was scooped into her father's arms as Sirius wanted to hear that sound again. "Did my little princess just say Dada? Let me hear that again?" A pair of pudgy little hands smacked Sirius on either cheek, as if his daughter was emphasizing just who she was talking about. Dada. The proud father was now dancing about the room with his giggling daughter in his arms. "She's a daddy's girl, my little princess is a daddy's girl." His wife was trying for a miffed expression and failing miserably. "Oh please, have you seen the two men in her life? Her poor mummy never stood a chance." She found herself being scooped into her husband's spare arm and receiving a kiss while their daughter had an arm around both their necks. Harry was back sitting with his arm around Hermione, clearly moved by the scene in front of them. "And that is why we fight." He hadn't meant for anyone else other than Hermione to hear. His emotions were all over the place, though, and Harry's voice was louder than intended. The entire room heard, and everyone currently in that room agreed. Albus thought what he held in his hands was a work of art in more ways than one. It was specifically designed to be placed on the base of the Triwizard Cup. Its real genius, though, was the fact it made no attempt at hiding. It actually did the exact opposite. Hiding in plain sight was utter genius, as was just how this impossible feat had been accomplished. The attachment would fit onto the trophy like a glove. It literally had been made to measure. Its other purpose was to display the names of previous winners of the Triwizard Tournament, with even a space left to add this year's winner's name. Instead of trying to hide, it screamed, "Look at me." Albus couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of all three champions admiring the names on the portkey and hoping their own name would soon join this illustrious company. That was never going to happen, though. Dolores had even been supplied with her cover story to attach the portkey. The cup was currently being held at the ministry in Dolores' old department. If she was unable to sneak in there and do the deed without anyone knowing, Dolores was to say she had it made especially for the tournament, and then forgot all about the piece after her involvement ended. The portkey itself showed negative to almost every magical scan, needing Harry's touch to activate it. That last part was the second reason why Albus thought this was a work of art, and also the reason why it had taken him over 3 weeks to decipher the bloody thing. That task being accomplished, though, he had then been able to add a little touch of his own. It may raise Tom's suspicions, but Lord Voldemort wanted Harry Potter dead. He needed to kill the boy and wouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. Tom would kill Harry, completing the prophecy, and then Albus would save the country. Save the world, even. Albus Dumbledore liked the sound of that. Quidditch fever had once more gripped Hogwarts. The last 2 round-robin matches had been contested over the previous weekends, resulting in this Saturday's final being between Slytherin and Durmstrang, with Victor and Draco being part of the large group of friends enjoying lunch that Monday. The conversation was never going to stay away from Quidditch for long. "So Harry, will you be coming to watch the final on Saturday? I am looking forward to playing against Draco. Surely you could miss training for just 1 day to watch your friends compete." "We will be missing training this weekend, Victor, but won't be spending that time watching Quidditch. Tonks thinks we have been overdoing the training this term and has ordered us to have a weekend of rest before I have the final task next week. To us, the best place to rest is on my island. We'll be leaving for there right after our potions class on Friday. Since Tonks is still on protection detail, she and Remus are coming too." This drew a quip from Padma, wanting to divert attention away for the real reason behind their trip. "We're not sure whether Tonks is just saying we need a rest so she and Remus can have a holiday too. As Neville and I are included as well, we really don't care. There's no way we would refuse a weekend in the Maldives. Sorry, Victor, no Quidditch match can live up to that. Pansy was quick to confirm she agreed with Pam's assessment. Too true. Even with Draco playing, I'd still rather be on Harry's island. Her comments even found agreement from her Seeker boyfriend. Pansy in her bikini or Victor in his Quidditch robes is no contest for me either. If there are any spare invitations going, you could count Pansy and me in too. This was something they wanted to nip in the bud. Hermione got in first. Sorry, Draco. The idea is for us to get away and forget about everything for the weekend. Victor could hardly believe his ears. This must be some island, Harry. The Bulgarian was quickly assured it was by anyone sitting there who had visited it. Also wanting to divert attention away from this weekend, Hermione made an on-the-spot decision. We held a birthday party for these two there last year. I think we should do the same again this summer, and everyone sitting here is invited. You'll then be able to make your own mind up, Victor. While this delighted everyone, it also opened an unexpected can of worms. It was Morag who set the ball rolling. Have you made holiday plans for this summer yet? Looking around, their friends told the four this was something that had been getting discussed. Susan, Hannah and Luna were all now staring at their plates in embarrassment, something Harry was never going to stand for. I'm really sorry, everyone. All four of us have gotten so wrapped up in our training that we haven't made any plans for summer. Whatever our plans are, though, you know we'll want to spend some of that summer with our friends and family. I think we should organize a family meeting for the following weekend. We can all sit down and plan our summer from there. Looking on as Luna, Susan and Hannah all broke into smiles was actually painful to watch. Harry could only hope they forgave him for not including them in the loop. Parvati, Pansy and Draco's expressions were rather strained, all three just hoping the entire family were available to sit down that weekend to plan their summer. Trying to keep the good mood going, Hermione made a point of letting Fleur and Victor know they were certainly classed as friends, and they would be planning to see them at some point over the summer, with a joint birthday party on a tropical island to look forward to, and the distinct possibility some of them would also be included in further holiday plans. Talk of Quidditch actually took a back seat for the rest of the day. Blaise had noticed his betrothed flinch during the holiday conversations, but waited until it was just the two of them to talk with Parvati about it. Do you want to tell me what's going on? There was all that talk of holidays, yet you appeared as if that was nothing but bad news. You love those holidays. I know, and I'm really looking forward to them this year. I can't tell you any more, Blaise. It's not my secret to tell. I promise you this, though. You will know everything before that family meeting, and also be included in it. After watching the ass Colin had made of himself with Luna regarding the Animagi incident, Blaise was certain this was the same scenario here. He was also certain the same players would once more be center stage, and had no intention of forcing Parvati's hand on this one. Can you at least tell me that these concerns are to do with your sister and have nothing to do with our betrothal? A passionate kiss later, and Blaise's last question had been answered. He was also smart enough to figure out what was going on, between all the training those four put in, and the event that was scheduled to take place between these 2 weekends. His as yet unanswered question just became a lot clearer. I'll be right beside you during the 3rd task. Thanks for understanding, Blaise, and I have this terrible feeling I'll really need you to be right beside me on that day. With Crow's Marauders taking place that evening, the couple spent a quiet few hours alone together contemplating just what the future might hold. With the summer now well and truly upon them, Emma and Dan were enjoying the Highland sunshine by taking Jamie down to the playground. This was one of the parts Harry had insisted be left after the fair, and although the carousels, puppet shows and all the other forms of entertainment were now gone, it was still a well-used facility. Both had gotten used to meeting the other parents as they too used the playground for their children, and Jamie certainly enjoyed sitting on a blanket with a couple of his goblin friends who were also too young for the swings and such. Harry would be delighted to know his Kinksy estate was becoming a real community. It wasn't too difficult to imagine Astrid Black sitting on that blanket along with Jamie and their little goblin friends, while the parents all sat having a chat in the sunshine. Even thinking about her other children nearly had the tears flowing for Emma. She and Dan both knew Hermione would do absolutely anything to fight by Harry's side and help keep him safe. They also recognized that although Harry probably didn't want Hermione anywhere near this fight, they would certainly be safer together. Neither she nor Dan were too bothered about this weekend their children had planned. Both knew what would be happening during that weekend, but how could you complain when Harry was whisking her off to a beautiful tropical island? It was only a few months before Hermione could do so legally, and this time next summer they would all be embroiled in planning their wedding. What had reduced Emma to sobs was Barchoke informing them Harry and Hermione had made their wills. There was certainly no comfort from knowing Jamie would be the main beneficiary. The very thought of them needing to write their last will and testaments was far more terrifying than any hang-ups over them losing their virginities to each other, something that was always going to happen anyway. The mother in Emma was struggling with the decision that would put both Harry and Hermione in deadly danger. No amount of logical explanations would change that. She could only pray the five of them came through this unscathed. Emma simply couldn't contemplate any other scenarios. Another family were also enjoying the Scottish sunshine, though there were certainly no goblins within sight of the Flannan Isles. This was a very special day for the family. Marvolo Rookwood was now 1 year old. Augustus had risked a late-night raid on a Muggle store to make this day special for his son. They even had cake and a few toys as presents. Their master wasn't one for sitting out in the sun, so it was left to just the three of them to enjoy Marvolo's special day. Since delivering the portkey to Umbridge, their only task left to accomplish was to kill the boy on the 24th, now only 9 days away. Augustus would have to say that his time spent here, this last year especially, was the happiest of his life. He had always thought his chances of having a loving wife and family were at best a pipe dream. Now he, Augustus Rookwood, had a stunningly beautiful wife and the most wonderful son imaginable. While he now thought their chances of pulling this off next week were good, Augustus certainly drew comfort from knowing that their son would be found if anything happened to Bella and him. Watching as Marvolo took his first teetering steps in this world, Augusta thought their boy deserved a better life than hiding out on this remote island. One thing Augustus was sure of, by next weekend, Marvolo would begin that journey to a better life. He could only hope it was Bella and him who led their son to this promise of a better life. Harry was leading them off the castle grounds when they came across Parvati and Pansy waiting on them. Hugs were exchanged before the six left the Hogwarts grounds and portkeyed away. I suppose I should be jealous, knowing how they are going to be spending this weekend. Then I remember what they're facing on Thursday, and any jealousy gets its arse well and truly kicked. When Blaze and I have our first time together, I don't want it to be because we might both be dead by the following weekend. Seeing the tears running down Parvati's cheeks, Pansy soon had her arm around her friend. Draco and I are in the same position. Sometimes I wish we didn't know what was happening. Oh no, that's much worse. I've tried that and your imagination can paint all different pictures of what's really going on. It's much better to know the truth. While offering comfort to Parvati, Pansy couldn't really agree with that analogy. Perhaps it was because she couldn't think of anything worse than to willingly face the people who had tortured her father to death. The six found themselves facing 3 chalets with the lights on, and the path from the beach lit so they could make their way safely to their accommodation. Going from the long summer day at Hogwarts to night in the Maldives took a moment to acclimatize their eyes. Sensing their nervousness, Tonks broke the awkward silence. Well, I don't know about anyone else, but I thought that was a bloody long week. I plan on spending a nice quiet evening with Wolfie here. I'm sure you 4 will be able to keep yourselves entertained. We'll take the middle chalet. That lets me do my job of keeping you lot safe better. With that, she dragged Remus away. Padma was glad it was dark so no one could see how much she was blushing. She grabbed her mate's hand and started dragging Neville off to the chalet on the extreme left of the row. Harry offered Hermione his arm as they headed right. He soon changed that to his arm being around her waist as he could feel his mate tremble. They entered the chalet and Hermione could see Harry had thought of everything. There was soft music playing in the background and there was a candlelit table set for a romantic dinner for 2. Hermione hadn't come here to eat though. Harry, this is beautiful and so thoughtful. If you don't take me into the bedroom right away though, I'm going to rip that shirt right off you and we'll end up on the floor. Oh Hermione, I like this shirt. Harry then found himself lost for words as he could see the lust reflected in Hermione's eyes. Wanting to let her know he felt exactly the same way, he ripped his own shirt right off and threw it away. Harry obviously got it right because Hermione launched herself at him, her hands wandering everywhere while their lips were locked. Without breaking their kiss, Harry lovingly scooped her up into his arms and headed for the bedroom. Their relationship had slowly progressed to the point where there would be no embarrassment tonight, just natural concern that they could each make the experience as pleasurable as possible for the other. It was understandable then that both had their attention on other things, neither noticing the golden glow radiating out the room at the exact moment their bond completed. Henrica found Sirius standing beside their daughter's cot. His gaze never shifted from Astrid and tears were slowly running down his cheeks. She wrapped her arms around her husband, not even needing to ask the question. Sirius, though, wanted to say what was on his mind. I feel, oh so blessed, love. Having you and our wonderful daughter in my life are more than I ever though possible, probably more than I deserve. That same life has taught me, though things are always in balance, there will be a price to pay for this happiness. I just can't shake this horrible feeling that the price is going to be paid on Thursday by some of our family. I love every single one of those teens, and Tonks is not only family but married to my best friend. Not being able to do anything is killing me. I don't know how their patents are coping with this. I just look at our little Astrid and I'm the blubbing wreck you found standing here. Gently kissing her emotional husband, Henrica understood at once what the problem was here. Sirius was worried he was failing his godson, his family, and by extension their daughter. Both Astrid's godparents would be right in the middle of this. Using your own balance system, did it never occur to you those scales of life were overdue to swing in a positive direction for my wonderful husband? I know you've had a shitty life, love, and are struggling to accept you should be this happy. You are a loving husband, wonderful father, and Harry thinks you're the best godfather on the planet. After him and Neville, of course. We've done everything we can, now all that's left to do is support the members of our family as best we can. Between now and Thursday, during that entire day and after too, we'll all need each other. Sirius's arms snaked around his beautiful wife. I'll need you way past Thursday, I need you every day for the rest of my life. Well, it's a good job you married me then, because I'm not going anywhere. Mum and Dad are arriving tomorrow too, supposedly to watch the Quidditch, but they'll be staying in Scotland until after the third task. What do you say about having an early night and trying to make them grandparents twice over? I would say that's a wonderful idea. Sirius's thoughts wandered for a moment before he told his wife where they had gone. You know, I don't think any of the family would mind if those girls came back from that island pregnant. As long as they come back from this fight on Thursday, they will be forgiven for just about anything. I agree, but there's no chance of that happening. Tonks made sure the entire situation was taken care of, for all three of them. This puzzled Sirius. I thought Tonks wanted a family. Oh, she does. Stop and think for a moment, though. If she found herself pregnant, there isn't a chance in hell either Remus or Harry would let her anywhere near this fight. When this is finally over, you might not see Remus for quite a while. Tonks has a fair bit of leave stacked up from the last 2 years, and I can't see Amelia turning down her request to use it. Tonks intends to be pregnant before the new term starts in September. This actually coaxed a smile from Sirius. Remus is indeed going to be busy. I seem to remember you mentioning it was time we got busy ourselves. Let's go and see if we can come up with a little sister or brother for our Astrid. They left their sleeping daughter's room, Henrica thinking her mission was accomplished. Sirius was certainly in a better frame of mind than when she first entered. Due to the unprecedented circumstances, his friends didn't want Barchoke to be celebrating the completion of his son and daughter's bond alone. Since this would usually occur the same evening as the couple's bonding, the parents would normally still be at the celebrations. Ragnarok, Sharpshard, Pitsley, and the proud father all shared tankards of grog, as Hermione officially became Barchoke's daughter, a citizen of the nation, and the new Lady Potter. As with all events like this, reminiscing was at the forefront of their minds. It doesn't seem that long ago he was just a little bundle being deposited on my desk. Now he's married his mate. I called him Crow, and he used cunning that bird would be proud of to turn that back on me. Had I known then what we know now, I would probably have called him Emir. The director was halted from saying any more by Barchoke's loud laughter. It took him a moment to recover before the ambassador could answer his three friends. I'm sorry, but you would find that as funny as I did if you knew more about the Muggles. Their queen has a grandson called Prince Harry. This did indeed set the other three off laughing. The quantities of grog being consumed might have had something to do with that, though Pitsley offered his opinion. Your son truly is a prince, Barchoke. He also chooses his friends as wisely as he picked his mate. They are such a force for positive change that Gringotts has already progressed beyond where I had even dared to dream was possible. Sharpshard's sentiment was of a completely different kind. He was well named Crow. The name for a group of them is a murder. That's what it will be on Thursday. We'll murder these honorless child-killing cowards where they stand before they can hurt anyone else, and then I intend to be drunk for a week. I don't think the nation has such a grog reserve, old friend. Barchoke still raised his glass though and toasted with the rest of them to that wonderful outcome might see Barchoke drunk for a week too. It wasn't the first time Harry had woken with Hermione in his arms. It was the first time though doing so while both of them were naked. Just thinking of last night, saw his arms tighten even more around his mate, causing Hermione to make a noise similar to that of a contented moonlight. He kissed the top of her head as Hermione snuggled in even more, if that was possible. I could get used to waking up like this for the rest of my life. Only one more summer to go, Hermione, then that's exactly what will happen. I hate to say this, love, but I think we need to get up. Harry, you mention us both needing a shower. I swear you'll be sleeping in the other room tonight. Oh, I was looking forward to washing your hair too. Unless you intend to spend the entire weekend in this chalet, we should get up and ready for our run. There was a moment of silence while Hermione considered her options. Staying in this chalet is a very attractive option. Looking at his naked mate, Harry certainly agreed with that. But we still have to face people. A run and then breakfast with everyone sounds good. How about an afternoon siesta, though? I knew you were the brains here. That sounds wonderful. So does getting my hair washed in the shower. Let's go. Meeting Padma and Neville could have been awkward, but both girls grabbed each other by the hand and then raced ahead, leaving Harry and Neville no choice but to follow on. There was no awkwardness between the boys either. They may have ran in silence, but the shit-eating grin Neville was wearing told everyone he was very happy with his life at the moment. The occasional bout of giggles coming from the girls meant they were being discussed. But again Neville just smiled at Padma as if she was an angel who'd fallen to earth just for him. They must have run over a mile before Neville broke the comfortable silence. Harry, we are the two luckiest blokes on the planet. There was no argument coming from Harry on that subject, yet he recognized that his brother in all but blood had more to say. I'm not scared anymore, Harry. Oh sure, I'm still frightened of what could happen when we face these bastards. But I'm not scared anymore. Padma did that. She made a man of me in more ways than just the obvious. My journey started when we first met. You offered me your hand in friendship and introduced me to the most wonderful witch in the world. I'm trying to say thanks, Harry, for everything. Nev, are we lucky? Hell yes. Do you need to thank me for anything? Absolutely not. Friendship and family is a two-way thing. You've more than held up your end of the bargain. His smile might not be able to widen any further, but Neville nodded in acknowledgement and thanks. Hermione thought this weekend would show us what our future held, and make us all fight harder to make that future come true. As usual, my beautiful mate was right. Next summer those two become our wives, and I will do absolutely anything to ensure that happens. I don't give a shit whether it's a magical spell, goblin steel or a muggle bullet that puts Voldemort down, just as long as the bastard goes down. Hermione taught me that. We really are lucky. The two witches must have finished their conversation, as with a jump that didn't even break their stride, Hover and Saber took to the air. Buff and Swift were right behind them as they flew around the island in formation. Tonks was delighted. She won her bet. Told you, Wolfie, not only are they exercising as usual, but will be over here for breakfast. Puts that supposed werewolf stamina of yours to shame. You didn't get out of bed for 2 days. Remus kissed the teasing witch. I didn't get out of bed because a certain aura wouldn't let me, and I thought my legendary stamina more than proved itself over those 2 days. That it did, lover, that it did. Now I need you to lock your marauder side away. You will not tease any of these 4 today. Or you're spoiling all my fun. Be a good little Wolfie, and I promise to make it up to you later. You can tease me as much as you want. A kiss later, and their bargain was sealed. The Quidditch matches at Hogwarts were proving to be incredibly popular, with today being the final, and Victor Crumb playing for Durmstrang against Slytherin. Dolores chose this time to make her move. Since she was effectively breaking into her old department, the Department of Magical Games and Sports, Dolores couldn't think of a better opportunity to carry out her task. Armed with the Dark Lord's portkey and her cover story, she was pleasantly surprised to discover the department was totally deserted. She had a small chuckle to herself at the irony of the situation. The department was empty because they were all away watching the Quidditch, a match that wouldn't be taking place at all if it wasn't for Crow's interference. Dolores savored the delicious thought that Crow was playing a part in his own downfall, and that now there was no chance of her being linked to the kidnapping. Her revenge was going to be oh so sweet. She placed the plate with the names of the past winners carefully on the base of the cup, a sticking charm making it appear as if it had always been there. Activating the portkey caused the entire cup to glow for a second. After that, Dolores' scans couldn't read any magical signature from the trophy. Having ridden her luck, Dolores got out of there as quickly as she could. Dolores was quite proud of herself for accomplishing what was another difficult task. Now all that she had left to do was look forward to Thursday and practice a concerned expression for when the goblin lover was whisked away from the stadium. Not as easy as it sounded, since Dolores would really be wanting to stand up and cheer. Even those not close to the 4 could easily see the difference when they walked back into Hogwarts on Sunday evening. They appeared happy, refreshed, and now didn't look as if they had the weight of the world on their shoulders. Their friends would have to wait though, as the quartet had bolted to greet their Swedish visitors, having not seen Mer or Lucas since Christmas. The 2 visitors were delighted to see the 4 looking so well, and would be able to pass on that news when they left Hogwarts for King Usse after dinner. They would of course be returning to the castle with the rest of the family on Thursday. Taking their seats at the Ravenclaw table gave their friends time to catch up. Fleur summed up the feelings of all those not in the know. "Mon Dieu, you look fantastique. Harry, you could make a fortune renting out Zid Island if a weekend can do that." It was with a cheeky grin Hermione answered her. "Fleur, we consider that island one of our homes. It's for family and friends only." "Oh, and Harry already has a fortune." "I think my lady is forgetting that is our fortune." A blushing Hermione was still smiling as she kissed her husband, the Potter ring having magically appeared on her finger after they completed their bond. Thankfully, like Harry's head of house ring, only people who knew about it would be able to see that magic now considered her Lady Potter. The couple were now considered married in 2 of the societies they inhabited. Their wedding next summer would complete the trilogy. While catching up, it didn't take long to discover that Victor had won the Quidditch tournament for Durmstrang. All of their Hogwarts friends, with the possible exception of Roger, were now hoping Harry would get his hands on the Triwizard Cup. None picked up on the involuntary shudder that passed through the 4 every time lifting that particular trophy was mentioned. Albus took particular care with dressing this morning. Today was the day he would return to his rightful place in magical society, and it was important he looked his best. That bastard Crow's slicing his beard off had called for an entire change of image. Instead of his flowing silver locks and beard, both were now neatly trimmed to make him look more like a warrior for the light, rather than the elder statesman his previous image projected. He had also avoided choosing some of his more outlandish and eccentric sets of robes, though deep purple with gold trimming couldn't really be classed as demure, like Dolores. He had also been practicing projecting a demure and heartbroken demeanor. Albus was sure he could even manage to shed a few tears over Crow's dead body. Knowing all eyes would be on him later, Albus checked his image one more time in the full-length mirror and was satisfied with what he saw reflected. There it was time to head to the stadium. Albus wanted a good seat. One way or another this would end today. Fleur and Victor were in the changing room waiting not only on the third task starting but also the third champion showing up. When he eventually arrived, Harry wasn't alone. Hermione, Padma, Neville and Tonks all accompanied him. Victor recognized something was wrong right away. It was the expressions they wore. As a professional sportsman, he'd seen that intense concentration before. They had their game faces on and someone was in deep trouble. He was pleased and relieved he managed to concentrate on their faces. Since all wore skin-tight body armor that emphasized every curve of their bodies, Victor thought he was looking at three of the sexiest girls he had ever seen, and that was with Avila in the room too. Since two of them currently had razor-sharp swords strapped to their backs, and the third was an aura, Victor's restraint in not ogling them was understandable. Throw in Harry, Neville and these girls were also friends of his, and it just couldn't happen. That didn't mean it was easy though. It was the Vila amongst them who broke the stunned silence. "What is going on here, Harry? Are all of you competing?" "Fleur, Victor, I'm really sorry we couldn't tell you sooner. There is no third task." "But, are you making the joke?" "No, Victor, we're not joking. This is certainly not a laughing matter. It was Voldemort who arranged for my name to be put in that goblet. He wants me dead and this is all part of his scheme. Voldemort thinks he's tricking me, but we've known every move he's made. I also want to assure you both that you were never in any danger throughout the tournament. Well, not from Voldemort at any rate. 3 of our fathers have been concealed in the stadium roof for every task, armed with guns that were a lot more accurate and powerful than the one I used in the last task. Had any of them appeared, they would have been cut down in seconds. This does not make sense, Harry. Both ours and Victor's ministers of magic are currently explaining exactly what has been happening to Madame Maxime. They will be here shortly to confirm everything I've said. She will need to take her seat in the stadium because Voldemort has people helping him, and they're here today. Victor, one of them is Dumbledore. This had the Bulgarian champion sitting down. Were you sure, Harry? Positive, though even Voldemort doesn't know that part. Umbridge was tasked with getting a sample of my blood. We think Dumbledore told her how to do that. Her personal elf stole my bloody towel after one of our morning practice sessions with our blades. It was a really bloody towel since these 3 also bled on it. You knew and still did these? Fleur, this has been handled at the highest levels of our governments. It's not just us against Voldemort. We all want this to end. Today is our chance. The cup has been transformed into a blood-bound portkey that will take me to Voldemort's trap. He doesn't know we're setting one for him. Again, I hope you can forgive me for keeping this from you. Fleur flew at Harry and had her arms wrapped protectively around her friend. You are ready to face Voldemort but worried about what we think, you silly man. Do not worry about us, just concentrate on what you have to do. As Fleur stepped back, Victor almost pushed her out the way in his haste to shake Harry by the hand. You have nothing to worry about with me. I want to go too. Durmstrang's honor demands that I do. At that, Amelia entered with both ministers and Ragnarok. Mr. Crumb, we expect them to be trapped behind wards we will have to pull down. We would welcome ones we could trust to help with that task. She hardly got finished speaking when Fleur jumped in to add her name to that list too, raising a smile amongst the 4. They were sure the rest of their friends would understand too. All 4 bowed to Ragnarok. The director was actually wearing armor. It would appear that he too was determined to be part of this fight today. Cornelius was shaking all their hands, but this was not the handshake of a politician. I swore I would stand beside you when you faced him, Harry. I'm here today to make good on my promise, along with every wand we can muster. Most of them don't really know what's happening yet, and won't until we announce it. Amelia also wanted to make sure there were no misunderstandings, though her instructions were simplicity itself. When you hear me scream down, that's exactly what you do. Hit the ground immediately because the stuff flying above your head will be lethal. Borislaw was shaking Victor's hand. We fight today to avenge our countrymen, these bastards murdered at the World Cup. The British have asked to deal with Dumbledore and I agreed. They do not want him back in our country anyway. Durmstrang will have a new headmaster and deputy in September. Checking her watch, Amelia signaled to Cornelius, "Minister, it's time." She then hugged the 4 teens and Tonks before the entire party headed out the dressing room to enter the stadium. Albus wasn't listening to the inane banter coming from the commentator, nor was he too bothered that the third task appeared rather easy. He would surely have come up with something more challenging than a maze. No, his entire concentration was focused on the tunnel that would lead the champions from the dressing room into the stadium. This was why he was totally surprised when someone sat next to him. Albus, I told you to return to Bulgaria and forget about Harry. You didn't listen, and now no one can help you." Before he could answer, Albus felt cold metal being pressed into the back of his neck as the seat on his right side was suddenly occupied too. This time he could see that Alice Longbottom now had a gun pressed into his side. Frank might struggle with his speech, but everything else works just fine. "You need to believe he's ready and capable of putting a bullet into that fucking manipulative head of yours. My godson, his mate and our children are about to go and face Voldemort, and you helped those evil bastards get to them. You have no idea how much I want to put a bullet in you myself. Give me an excuse, Albus. Just give me an excuse." Cornelius, Borislaw, Barchoke and Amelia walked into the stadium. Harry's party and the other 2 champions followed on. Honora handed a microphone to the minister as Lee's routine to warm up the crowd came to an abrupt end. "As you can see, we have a slight change of plans today. In fact, the third task has just been cancelled." There wasn't a sound from the crowd. The auras and warriors now streaming into the stadium might have had something to do with that. Cornelius then proceeded to tell everyone exactly what was going on. The Wizarding Wireless had been denied the right to broadcast this event live for this very reason. Centurion Crow's name was placed in the Goblet of Fire by Dolores Umbridge, acting on the orders of Voldemort. That did raise some noise. The 3 Auras who normally trained with Harry's group had been tasked with arresting Umbridge. They found themselves having to try and defend the witch. There had been a group of Crow's marauders sitting a couple of rows behind her. Dolores was taken down before the 3 Auras could get there. 2 had to shield while the third levitated the unconscious witch out the stadium. Some very accurate spells, though, left her barely recognizable as human, far less as a witch called Dolores Umbridge by the time they got her out. At any other time, Cornelius would have enjoyed watching Dolores get taken apart by students. Not today, though. Madame Umbridge was not working alone. Albus Dumbledore was advising her on how best to help Voldemort. "Have you anything to say, Albus?" All eyes may now be turned in his direction, but this was not how Dumbledore had planned it. He still hoped to talk his way out of this, though. "If I am to be publicly accused, I would at least think these good people deserve to hear what proof you have." He didn't get to finish his impromptu speech. Alice's Grow interrupting him. "Wrong answer. We don't have time for your games today. This is for the greater good, Albus. Just not yours." Dan had removed some of the power from their bullets, not wanting anyone else injured should it pass straight through the old goat's body. There wasn't a loud bang, but Dumbledore's scream made up for that as the elbow of his wand arm was just shattered. "Okay, Severus, do your stuff. If he puts up too much of a fight, I can easily put another bullet in him. I've got 5 left." Albus was in a great deal of pain and shock when Severus just added to that by standing and attacking his mind. Normally he would have been able to repel Severus's attack, but things weren't normal. The pain emanating from his shattered elbow was intense. There were also guns being pressed into the back of his head, and now his right knee too. The horrendous agony from his elbow was irrefutable proof. The people who held these guns were more than willing to use them. While Albus and Severus fought their battle of wills, Cornelius explained to the crowd that the trophy had been turned into a portkey to whisk Harry away to where Voldemort had prepared his trap. Telling the crowd that Professor Snape was trying to get whatever information Dumbledore had out of him, since Voldemort would get suspicious if his trap wasn't sprung soon, saw an unprecedented swell of support head in Severus's direction. It was a now heavily perspiring Severus, who once more sat down. He certainly needed a seat. A few deep breaths were also required to center himself before casting the sonorous charm to give everyone the news. The portkey is set to take the Centurion to a field overlooked by a statue of a knight on a horse. It's at a place called Bannockburn. This caused great celebration amongst the crowd, and when Minerva McGonagall shouted, she knew exactly where that was. Even the family were cheering. Severus, though, had more to say. He held his hand up for silence before continuing. Dumbledore here added his own little twist to Voldemort's plan. He built a stunner into the portkey. Should Harry touch that cup, he will arrive in Bannockburn unconscious. The sound of a gunshot was clearly heard this time. The Dark Lord looked upon the statue of Robert the Bruce and wasn't impressed. Then again, very little impressed him. One thing did imprint on a young Tom Riddle, however. One of his primary school teachers had a way with words that simply mesmerized and inspired the children in his care. Listening to the enthralling tale of how this noble knight had failed twice already in his quest and was then forced to hide for his life in a cave was a memory that still stuck with him after all these years. Hearing how the Bruce gained hope by watching while a spider tried and tried again until it managed to spin its web was awe-inspiring to a 7-year-old Tom Riddle. This was the tiny seed that eventually germinated into his never give up and your schemes will come to pass mentality. Lord Voldemort certainly now realized that part of the story was probably nothing more than an old wives' tale, but it was undeniable that Robert the Bruce won a great victory on this very spot. He also became ruler of his country, which was what had brought the Dark Lord here. Unlike the Bruce, Lord Voldemort had spun his own web, and now it only remained for his victim to fall into his clutches. When he killed Potter, the Dark Lord intended to transfigure this statue into a giant likeness of himself before placing the boy's dead body in the effigy's outstretched hands. They would then remove the Muggle-repelling charms from the site and head out of the country, returning to their base only long enough to pick up Nagini and the baby. Like Robert the Bruce, Lord Voldemort was destined to rule over this country too, and that journey would start over in earnest today. The echo of the gunshot wasn't heard, Dumbledore's screams of pain drowning out any chance of that happening. After listening to what he'd intended, Alice's finger had tightened on that trigger all of its own accord. The spirit of her best friend, Lily Potter, might have had something to do with this, though Lily would surely have aimed higher up. Alice's gun was now aimed considerably higher up, right between Dumbledore's eyes. The bullet that had destroyed his knee also caused the old wizard to tumble right off his seat. Dumbledore was now lying on the floor space between the rows of seats, writhing in agony while an armed Alice coolly towered over him, poised and ready to finish the job. "You sick bastard, have you ever spoken the truth to us?" A hand very gently pushed her gun arm down. "Whatto? We're better than him, Luddo." "I know, darling, and he really deserves to spend the rest of his miserable life rotting in Azkaban. Anything happens to our family, though, nothing, and no one is going to stop me shooting the bastard again." Severus then stunned Albus, removed his wand and wrapped him in chains for good measure. With a shattered elbow and knee, Dumbledore wasn't going anywhere under his own steam. Emma was determined her children weren't going anywhere either. She handed Jamie to Sapphire. A crying Luna was sitting next to her goblin friend, with Colin trying to comfort his girlfriend. Colin nodded. He would take care of all of them before Emma headed down to be with the group. Knowing there were effectively 2 prime ministers and the goblin ruler standing there, and that Harry was an officer in that same goblin army, Emma couldn't go charging in as protective mummy with all guns blazing. She intended that her opinion would be heard, though, and was delighted to see Dan seem to be on the same wavelength. "Won't your armor protect you from that spell, Harry?" "Normally that would be a yes, Dan, but touching that cup with my armor won't activate the portkey. It needs skin contact, specifically mine. It will also stun anyone else who touches the cup along with me." Emma waited no longer. "Now we know where they are, can't you just all go and get them?" Harry hated having to give this answer. He just didn't have another. "They're behind wards, Mum. By the time we could set up wards of our own to keep them there, they would be long gone, and we would have missed our only chance. We have to be in there to give our warders the time they need to complete their task, before those 3 disappear again." "We are talking about 10 seconds, Mum. and Amelia will already be using those precious seconds to start bringing down Voldemort's wards. Hermione wanted to let everyone know Harry wasn't going anywhere without her. Betsy can make sure I'm right behind you. Between my arrival, Tonks, Neville and Padma, along with the hundreds turning up outside their wards, that should buy us the seconds we need for me to revive you. Can't we get that stunner removed from the portkey? This scheme was already too dangerous in my opinion. You arriving into their clutches while unconscious is bloody madness. Only Dan's arms wrapping around Emma halted her race to hysteria. It was a close call though, and she couldn't rule out visiting that location later. The Longbottoms and Severus arrived to destroy Emma's last desperate suggestion. I'm sorry about this, Emma, but it took Dumbledore hours to weave that spell through the portkey. It would take him hours to remove it too, but that was before Alice put a couple of bullets in him. He couldn't do it now, even if we trusted him with a wand, something I wouldn't recommend. Having looked into his mind, Albus Dumbledore is one sick, twisted individual. It was Barchoke who summed the situation up. They have a plan that has a fair chance of working, but we're going to need a decision, and soon. These 5 are the ones who are going to be in danger. I think it's their decision to make. The ambassador found himself being interrupted by Neville. I think it's Harry's decision to make. We'll be right behind him, but it's his life that's on the line here. He says go, Padma, and I will have his back. Tonks quickly agreed with that sentiment. Where Harry went, she would follow. Taking Hermione's hand, Harry asked for her help with this decision. It's us, Hermione, from now until the end. This is certainly something that affects both of us, so what do you think? I think we might not get a better chance. A chance we've all trained bloody hard for. As I've just said, Betsy and I will be right behind you, with the revival spell already on my lips. Then we dance. We can't live the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders for the ambush we know would come one day. Now is our day, Harry, this is our hour. That was exactly how Harry felt. Hermione just put those same emotions into words far better than he ever could. They both discovered, though, that someone had already done that job for them brilliantly too. Professor McGonagall's Scottish lilt was thicker than anyone there had heard it before as Minerva recited something she obviously knew well. Now's the day, and now's the hour. See the front of battle lore, see approach proud Edward's power, chains and slavery. Edward Longshanks wasn't known as the Hammer of the Scots for nothing, and he didn't distinguish between magical and muggle. Rabbie Burns wrote that about the Battle of Bannockburn, something that has a special place in every Scot's heart. That abomination, Voldemort, wants to destroy that association forever, and Dumbledore was helping him. I can make Amelia portkeys that will drop her auras right on top of the bastards. There were a few others in the audience shouting they could do the same. With the mission now a go, there was a load of organizing to be done, and quickly, Mad-Eye Shax and the trio of auras they had sparred with were prepared for this moment. The auras were split into 5 groups and received a rapid refresher course on the best spells for pulling down wards. Bill had his own group who were doing the same. His group might not rival the aura groups for size, but they won hands down on commitment. Arthur, Percy, Penny and the now-of-age twins were just the members of Bill's family that were involved. The Blacks, Hobsons and Remus would also be hitting those wards with everything they had. The other 2 champions had been joined by Roger and Cedric, Amos also choosing to fight beside his son. Madame Maxine had insisted on joining too, as had Pomona Sprout, Phileas Flitwick and Severus. Since Amelia was in overall charge of the battle, Borislaw and Cornelius intended to fight alongside this group too. Minerva was making her contribution with the portkeys. She needed to sit down for the last couple and had nothing left to take to any fight. Dan had his own squad of shooters, with Barchoke, Frank and Ramrao. Not one of the fathers would hesitate to put a bullet into any of the 3 murderers. Ragnarok had teams of warders ready to stop anyone leaving the fight before it was finished, while 4 squads of warriors were itching for their steel to taste blood. The women, children and warriors these 3 had murdered that dark afternoon in Diagon Alley would be avenged today. They were all hoping the price paid wouldn't be as high, though. Knowing their centurion was going to enter this battle unconscious, relying on his mate and their friends to rescue him, elevated all 5 of their statuses even higher within the warriors' ranks, and the nation If they pulled this off today, the Hall of Heroes would be seeing a new tableau commissioned. The three mothers were currently hugging the five who would face this. Emma, Smeeta and Alice considered all of them family. Devastated wouldn't even come close to describing their emotions if they didn't all come back. Emilia was looking over everything while trying to think of anything they might have missed when she felt a tug on her robes. She recognized Dobby and Betsy at once, and they had 4 other elves for company. "Missy Bones, we's went and seen bad wizards. We's like to show you before yous go there." Emilia wasn't sure what was being offered here. "You can show me this, Dobby, without Voldemort knowing about it." All 6 elves were enthusiastically nodding in sync, though it would seem Dobby had been elected spokeself. "We's cans do that easy." The 6 elves began waving their hands, and the ground in front of Emilia quickly transformed into a scale model of the battle site. It took her a moment to get her breath back before Emilia shouted, the urgency in her voice stopping everyone. "Harry, you'll definitely want to see this, and so will quite a few others." A quick explanation of what this was saw the Granger women fussing over a blushing Dobby and Betsy. Harry made a point of thanking the other 4 too. They all now knew the warded area was slightly smaller than a Quidditch pitch. Barchoke was already talking with the elves on the best place to transport his warders, while Dan was carrying out the exact same process with the shooters. They were running out of time, though all were now far more prepared than they thought they could possibly be. Only Harry, being stunned, was holding them back from cheering at all the good news coming their way. The 3 couples shared meaty kisses with their spouses before getting into position, ready to give the signal. There were witches sitting in the stadium who had once fancied they had a chance at the boy who lived. Watching this drama unfold just emphasized why their chances had always been nil. Harry was deliberately placing his very life in Hermione's hands, and she was prepared to go toe-to-toe with the trio of Voldemort, Lestrange and Rookwood in an effort to save him. As much as they might have coveted the title of Lady Potter, none of them were crazy enough to even contemplate doing that. Emilia's voice rang around the stadium. "This is it, people. Do your jobs and the first round is on me. When Harry leaves, we're all right behind him. Counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go." The mock maze, supposedly arranged for the 3rd task, had long since been vanished. Harry stood in the center of the arena and reached for the cup. He had no sooner left than Hermione was gone too, holding the little elf's hand. "Tonks!" shouted Potter, "emergency! Go, go, go!" Before she was also gone, Padma and Neville were also traveling by holding an elf's hand, the couple quickly leaving too. Within seconds, an arena that had been bursting at the seams was empty, except for the 3 mothers and Augusta. Sapphire made her way over to return Jamie to his mother, while Hannah and Susan brought Astrid over as the group were left with nothing to do but wait for news. A crying Luna raced to the group and was now clinging to Emma and Jamie. This had been a total shock to her. The rest of the stadium could only sit quietly and await news. Some, like Molly, who was sitting trying to comfort Ginny, now had a large stake in this battle too. Most of her family had just portkeyed away to fight Voldemort. It was only the sheer number of those who had left to fight alongside them that was offering her comfort. Even Voldemort shouldn't be able to resist when faced with what was effectively 2 armies. Parvati was weeping in Blaze's arms, having said all that needed saying to the 4 of them before the event began. Parvati knew if she'd gone down there, then it could have affected Padma. They would probably have needed to stun her before she would let her twin go to face this. Blaze had his suspicions, but this was way beyond anything he'd imagined. Draco and Pansy were sitting beside them, trying to offer some comfort. "I guessed what they were planning way back. A part of me wishes I hadn't. It's been horrendous watching them train for this and not being able to help in any way." Parvati was trying to control her sobs as she spoke. "Just being there for them is all they wanted, Draco." "Blaze, we need to go down there. Mum will need us now." The 4 headed to where the group was anxiously waiting for news, knowing today's battle would be measured in minutes, if that. All around the stadium, children were being comforted by parents or friends. Natalie was nearly as upset as Luna. She clung to her parents, seeking their assurance everything would be okay. Little Danielle Dugan knew her daddy, Harry, Hermione and Barchoke had all gone off to fight the bad wizards. In her case though, she was the one actually offering comfort. "Mummy, the bad wizards won't stand a chance, not with my daddy and Harry fighting them together. Barchoke and Hermione won't let anything happen to them either." Deborah wrapped their precious daughter in her arms, hoping Danielle was right. Maggie Creevy was simply inconsolable. It didn't matter what anyone said, she wouldn't believe them. Nothing would work except seeing them all come back. Jenny was a nervous wreck, clinging to Ewan for comfort. Bill had kissed her before a lot of people she knew really well, basically just headed off to war. She didn't know anything about magical wars. What Jenny did know, though, was that, in any type of war, very rarely did everyone make it home alive and in one piece. She was praying like she'd never prayed before that this would be one of those oh-so-rare occasions. The elation that flashed through the Dark Lord when the wards warned him there was an incoming portkey was indescribable. Here was his chance for revenge, his chance for redemption in the eyes of his deserting pure-blood followers, his chance to get off that bloody island. The elation vanished instantly, though when an unconscious Potter arrived, something wasn't right here. All three already had their wands in their hands. Those wands immediately tracked to the girl who had just appeared at Potter's side. Betsy placed Hermione right beside Harry. She was alarmed, though, at the three wands now pointed at her beloved mistress. With a snap of her fingers, the trio were knocked onto their asses. "You will not hurt my family." After reviving Harry, Hermione could see how much the loyal elf had taken out of herself buying them that time. She was swaying about as if drunk. "Betsy, go, be safe." When Tonks appeared beside her master and mistress, Betsy popped away to the other side of the wards. She would be staying to watch in case her mistress needed her again. Augustus scrambled back to his feet, disbelief written on his features. Not only were there now 3 opponents inside their blood wards, what seemed like hundreds more were appearing outside them. Knowing their trap had just been reversed, he looked toward his master and mate, and knew instantly he would die today. They should have left immediately, but that wouldn't be happening. His master was enraged beyond reason at being thwarted again, and getting knocked on his ass by a house elf was clearly an insult too far for him. While his beautiful Bella had the bloodlust in her eyes, they wouldn't be going back to collect Marvolo after this battle. Augustus wouldn't be going anywhere at all. His last thoughts proved to be those about his mate and son, since none of them had seen the witch and wizard that an elf had placed behind them. Powerful cutting curses from Padma, and Neville slammed into him. His very last memory was that of an enraged Bella turning to face these new attackers. The goblins had their ward up in record time, and the magic users were all hitting the Dark Lord's blood ward with everything they had. Warriors and centurions were poised to charge the instant the wards came down, knowing those same magical users would be firing over their heads. Padma and Neville were in way over their heads. Putting Rookwood down had swung the odds to 5 against 2. When those two were Voldemort and Lestrange, though, those odds still weren't in their favor. Bellatrix was faster, deadlier and more powerful than anyone they'd ever faced. She was also clearly mad, as in more than just angry. Foam and spittle was coming from her mouth as curses spewed out her wand, all of them powerful, dark and deadly. Both of their goblin shields had already been sacrificed to save them from some really nasty shit. When Padma stumbled on the uneven ground, she thought it was all over. Lestrange was on her in a flash, a Cruciatus heading in her direction, only for Neville to throw himself in front of the torture curse. His screams were loud and piercing as Lestrange couldn't resist a bit of taunting. "Oh look, another Longbottom at the end of my wand. I'll need to make sure this one doesn't recover." It took 4 warriors to pull Frank down. Seeing his son under that hated curse caused the retired Auro to open fire, even though the wards had yet to come down. There were bullets ricocheting everywhere, and someone was going to be hurt. The warriors were as gentle as possible. They just needed to get Frank to stop pulling the trigger. Harry already had his shield on his arm when he'd touched the portkey. Hermione's revival spell saw him roll and then get to his feet, with his armor now active and his knife in his hand. The sword of Gryffindor was soon out the sheath at his shoulder and in his other hand. He would need everything he had, as Voldemort appeared to be seriously pissed off. Padma and Neville then taking out Rookwood certainly didn't improve Voldemort's mood any. His role had placed Harry to Hermione's right, with Tonks covering her left. All three were firing spells at Voldemort, but he was still managing to return deadly spells at them. The ground under their feet was just a field, not the best for dodging around on, and that was before Spellfire started churning it up. Every time Harry would attempt to get close enough to use his sword, Voldemort increased the rate and ferocity of his spells heading in Tonks and Hermione's directions. Harry was then forced to fire spells and move back to help cover the girls. There would be no victory in taking out Voldemort if it cost one of them their lives. This tactic was effectively forcing Harry to fight Voldemort's type of fight, but all the combatants knew it wouldn't be for much longer, hence why no one was holding anything back. This was sheer bedlam. There was an unprecedented amount of magic being poured into those shields, so the clock was ticking. Since both Hermione and Harry had already had their goblin shields shattered too, it simply couldn't go on much longer without someone getting seriously hurt. Harry's worst fears were just borne out as Neville's screams reverberated over the battlefield. Tonks had no option but to attack Lestrange. The fact that the three of them were barely containing Voldemort at the time couldn't be taken into consideration. Harry was about to change tactics again when Voldemort beat him to it. Seeing the pink-haired one having to switch her attack gave the Dark Lord the opportunity he'd been working toward. He didn't want to just kill the Potter brat today, he wanted him to die a broken man, and Lord Voldemort knew exactly how to achieve that. Seeing she was distracted by the delicious screams coming from her friend, 3 curses left his wand in the direction of Potter's bitch. She managed to dodge 2 but not the third. It didn't really matter that it only hit her right shoulder. When the killing curse hit, you were dead. Watching her topple to the ground froze Potter, and gave the Dark Lord a few seconds to enjoy his victory. Potter, another mudblood bitch dies trying to save you and fails. It's time to die, Harry Potter. Neville's screams had forced Tonks to change targets. The aura was now hitting her aunt with everything she had. Bella, though, was dealing with it all and still had time to chat. Oh look, a half-blood black dares to attack her betters. I'll show those sisters of mine who's stronger. They'll know for sure when they're weeping over your body. Avada Kedavra. Bella never got to finish the spell as she had just made a critical error. Bella had dismissed Padman, not something that a person who had just tortured Neville should ever do. The enraged witch charged the short distance between them, and her flashing blade, with the Longbottom name engraved along its length, sliced through Bella's arm just below the elbow. Tonks hit her aunt with a stunner just as a second cry rang around the wards. The anguish dripping off this voice would have melted hearts of stone. Seeing Hermione lying there unmoving, Harry's sword seemed to move on its own. As a heartbroken scream left his lungs, his magic poured from the fabled blade. His grief was mighty, and everything he had left was channeled toward defeating his enemy. Voldemort was just about to cast another killing curse, when a bolt of blinding white light shot from the sword, and there was no wand left to cast the spell. There was no arm there either. The raw magic had simply vaporized everything it touched, his wand, arm and part of his shoulder, before continuing on its way and impacting on the ward. Dan had tried their doctored bullets the instant they arrived, quickly signaling to the other 3 they wouldn't penetrate the wards. He was standing watching what appeared somewhat like the deadliest New Year celebrations on the planet. Magic was being poured into the shields, the flashes of light also causing flakes of twinkling magic to drop down on the combatants inside like macabre confetti. Those inside were also supplying fireworks of their own, with spells being fired off at an incredible rate. Seconds almost seemed like hours, as they were forced to wait on the wards coming down. Never more so than when Neville screamed, watching as Hermione was hit with that green curse of death, seemed to make time stand still. His daughter appeared to take an entire lifetime to collapse to the ground. Harry's anguished scream restarted time, and Dan was firing before he knew it. Harry's magic also hitting the wards was the final push needed to bring them down. Dan's bullet was perhaps the first thing to pass through them. Since Barchoke had shot at the exact same time, it would be impossible to tell who was first. What was unmistakable, though, was that both bullets impacted with Voldemort's head. He was dead before the maelstrom of spells hit as he fell to the ground. Tonks had heard Amelia's down and pulled Padma to the ground. The witch was intent on using her blade to finish Lestrange. She pointed Padma at Neville before turning to see a sight that was totally heartbreaking. Harry was crawling to Hermione, trying to protect his mate from any overhead spells by covering her body with his own. The shout of "Cease fire" brought silence to the field of battle. Harry was lying protectively over Hermione, knowing it was too late, but not caring. He was crying while tenderly moving her beautiful hair from her face, whispering softly in her ear as he embraced the woman he loved. "You are mine, and I will always be yours, now and until the day I die. I am so sorry, my love. You fought so bravely." Harry couldn't say any more. His imagination was playing tricks on him. He could have sworn Hermione's chest had just risen, but the dead don't breathe. He then examined her shoulder to see it was bleeding, something the dead don't do either, and the killing curse doesn't leave a mark. There was no mistake this time. Her chest had just risen again. Warriors had formed a circle around the Centurion and his fallen mate, giving him a little time to grieve. They were facing away to provide their Centurion with some semblance of privacy, so the warriors couldn't really miss both fathers trying to comfort one another. Barchoke had his arm around Dan's shoulder. This was possible because the distraught father was currently slumped on his knees sobbing. Both fathers couldn't quite believe what they heard next. "Alive. She's alive. We need a healer. Get a healer over here quick." Ragnarok himself was first through the line of warriors protecting the couple, closely followed by a couple of healers. Dan struggled drunkenly to his feet, desperately wanting to believe what he'd just heard, but terrified to do so. Leaning on Barchoke was the only reason he was able to approach their fallen daughter. Both gained a semblance of hope from watching the healers work. There was nothing for a healer to do when someone was dead. Cutting her dragonhide top away, the healers were at once able to see what had happened. "Centurion, your family armor saved your mate's life. The killing curse can be stopped by a physical barrier, though that barrier is often destroyed. Her golden armor has been blasted into her shoulder and will have to be removed. The shock from that probably knocked her out. However, I would not recommend reviving her at the moment. She would and will be in a lot of pain until we can clean that shoulder up." Ragnarok wanted there to be no chance of errors here. "Healer, she will live? She will have trouble wielding a sword like she has before. Apart from that, I would expect her to make a full recovery." The healer was prevented from saying any more as Ragnarok let out a bellow that was part celebration, but a good portion of relief too. This was immediately picked up and repeated by Barchoke and the other goblins, spreading right across the battlefield as jubilant warriors announced to the world in general that their warrior princess had defied the odds again and survived. Swords and axes drummed off shields as a total victory was now being wildly celebrated. Dan held the emotional wreck that was Harry in his arms. It was the only way the healers could get to work on Hermione. "I thought I had lost her, Dan. I can't lose her. I just can't. She's still with us, son, though who's going to tell her mother?" Both felt hands on their shoulders as a knackered Sirius stood with them. "I'll do that. You'll need to go to Gringotts with Hermione. I'll bring the rest of the family. Gringotts is going to be busy tonight." With Sirius mentioning family, it suddenly hit Harry he hadn't asked about anyone else. Seeing his Hermione lying there had blocked everything and everyone else out. "Neville, Padma, Tonks. How are they?" "Neville was hit with the Cruciatus and is being treated as we speak. Padma is fine but won't leave his side. Tonks has been inconsolable. She thought she failed you. Tonks was magnificent. We would never have lasted without her. Those were the longest seconds of all our lives." He would get no argument from his godfather on that one. "I'll tell her that." She just about fainted when the word spread Hermione had made it. "I'm puzzled though. I thought her armor only covered her shield side and part of her torso. That's her other shoulder. Did you change it?" This had Harry shaking his head. "We haven't done anything. That's why I thought she was gone. I knew that shoulder was unprotected." It was a smiling Barchoke, who enjoyed proving his son wrong. "I beg to differ. Have you tried it since completing your bond?" Harry was still standing with Dan's arm around him, as the healers had Hermione on a stretcher and would soon be ready to portkey her away. He kept his head down as he answered, "No, We've only done light training since returning from the island." Seeing his son was uncomfortable with this subject, Barchok pressed ahead. Now this war was over. Their new situation would have to be dealt with. The only way to do that was to get the subject out in the open and talk about it. "I think the magic released when you completed your bond would have been enough to extend her armor. There was certainly plenty magic present when you initiated your bond. That was 3 years ago, and you're both a lot more powerful now." Harry still had his head down. "I never noticed in either of those occasions." Dan pulled Harry closer. "Listen, son. I know Hermione wanted to complete your bonding so she could save you. If that saved her life too, then you'll certainly get no grief from me about it or your mum." At that, they were ready to go. Both fathers accompanied their children to Gringotts, leaving Sirius with the task of returning to Hogwarts and breaking the news. Amelia stood with Cornelius, Borislaw and Ragnarok over the body of Voldemort. He wasn't coming back from this. Between bullets, multiple spells, and Amelia had seen at least one fireball hit, the Dark Lord was truly gone. "Do you want the body to display? I know that is your custom." Ragnarok nodded to the minister in thanks but declined the offer. "While it is our custom to display the heads of our enemies, this piece of shit doesn't even deserve that honor. We have been avenged and had plenty of our people here to witness it. Rookwood is also dead, but what about Lestrange?" Cornelius quickly answered that, seeing Borislaw was more than interested too. "Oh, you have my assurance she will be dealt with permanently. We will need to interview her first about what happened to any baby. She was pregnant after all, and also to discover if anyone other than Umbridge was working with them. Then she will receive an overdose of Veritaserum." Both Borislaw and Ragnarok were satisfied with that. The group then found themselves being approached by Rita Skeeter and asked if any of them would like to make a statement. Harry was asked to leave as the healers worked on Hermione. She needed delicate work done, not something to be hampered by her mate pacing up and down while glowering at them. He found both fathers waiting outside, and Betsy cowering in a corner. He approached the little elf and knelt down beside her. "She's going to be fine, Betsy. Hermione is going to be with us for many years to come." "Master is sure?" "I'm sure." She flung herself at him and cried into his chest. Betsy thought she had lost her mistress. "So did I, Betsy, so did I." As the little elf regained control of herself, still determined to wait outside the place her mistress was, Harry, Barchok and Dan headed off to find Neville. They walked into his room and Harry was attacked by a witch. Padma had her arms around him and was kissing all over his face between words. "Are you all right? I thought we'd lost her." "I'm fine, Padma, and Hermione will be too." Sounding remarkably like his father, Neville still had the shakes from the cruciatus exposure. He nevertheless tried to crack a joke. "Hey, Harry, anything going on you two want to tell us about?" Standing with his arms around this beautiful witch, Harry just couldn't resist. "Yes, Neville, Padma and I are getting married." This announcement was greeted with total silence. Harry squeezed Padma to let her know there was a punchline coming, and to stop her belting him one. "To the two most wonderful people on the planet." Barchok started it, but soon Dan, Frank, Ramrado, Neville and Padma were all roaring with laughter. This just seemed to upset Harry though. "Oh, come on guys, you wait until Hermione isn't here, and then you laugh at one of my jokes. You know she'll never believe this." That just made the six of them laugh all the harder, knowing what Harry said was true. Augusta had made a portkey that would bring some of them right back to the stadium. As the minutes ticked by, the worry felt by those waiting climbed exponentially. Something must have happened. They should have been back with news by now. "Emma, we don't know that." "I was an aura, this is always the worst bit." They were huddled in a group, trying to ignore that every pair of eyes in the stadium was focused on them. Alice's words providing a little comfort until another minute passed. It was Smeeta this time who let her nerves get the better of her. Amelia hoped to have those wards down in 30 seconds. They left nearly 10 minutes ago. She was halted by the appearance of the Blacks and Hobsons in the middle of the arena. Sirius wasn't going to hang about. He knew there were thousands of people here waiting on news. Casting a sonorous on himself, he gave them the ultra-short version of what had happened. Voldemort is dead, and our people are all okay. The roar this generated would have deafened the shooters, had they still been hidden in the stadium roof. The four then headed straight over to the family, who were all hugging each other while crying tears of relief. Knowing Sirius as they did, all could see he had more to say. You need to remember what I just said is true. We have some injuries, but they'll soon be fine. Lestrange hit Neville with the Cruciatus. Alice had her hand over her mouth at that, trying not to scream at the pain her son must have suffered. He's fine, Alice, and receiving treatment in Gringotts. That Padma took Lestrange out with her sword is probably the best tonic he could have at the moment. She may have tears in her eyes, but Alice Longbottom was made of stern stuff. Turning to Smiter, she attempted a smile. Have I told you that I love my daughter-in-law? She's certainly good for my son. Sirius then turned to Emma. Harry and Hermione are really mates now. Both are the only known survivors of Voldemort's killing curse. It hit her armor and she has an injury similar to the one Barchoke received in the Ministry. The healers are removing pieces of her golden armor from her shoulder as we speak. Emma had first-hand experience of just how good goblin healing was. Hermione being in their care was actually reassuring. She just needed to hear confirmation for herself. She's fine though, Sirius. Hermione's in no danger. Only of my godson never letting her out of his sight again. For a moment we all thought we had lost her. Emma, that was not a good moment. All four fathers travelled to Gringotts and are waiting for you there. That was all Emma needed to hear. They were all safe and waiting on her. Are you okay to travel, Sirius? The four of you look done in. The four of us are, Emma. We could see them all fighting for their lives. Their opponents weren't holding anything back. You better believe we all put everything we had into bringing those wards down. They were handing out pepper-up potions back at Bannockburn, but we knew you would be desperate for news. We'll all follow on shortly. After a visit to Poppy, she kissed Sirius' cheek while Henrika collected Astrid. Emma then called for Dobby and asked if he could arrange transport for all of them to Gringotts. It only took a minute for all the family to be standing on the front steps of the Goblin Bank, only Augustus staying behind to look after Hogwarts. The Goblin guards knew exactly who these people were, especially with Sapphire amongst them. They were escorted straight to the medical facility. Hermione slowly opened her eyes to find herself looking into that special pair of green ones she loved so much. Then what happened earlier hit home. Oh, Harry, I'm so sorry. I let everyone down. What happened? How's Neville? Hermione was stopped from saying any more by the simple fact of Harry kissing her. Everyone's fine, love. The job's done and you didn't let anyone down. Just take it easy. It's not every day you get hit by a killing curse. The entire family are waiting to see you, but there's someone you need to see first. A signal with his hand, and Betsy was very nearly in the bed beside Hermione. Mistress needs to do what Master says, take care of herself and get better. I will, Betsy, and thank you for today. You were wonderful, probably saved all our lives. I need you to look after yourself too. Will you do that for me? The little elf's head was nearly coming off with the eagerness of her nodding, trying to please her mistress. You take a good rest, Betsy. We'll soon be back home. A happy Betsy hugged her mistress before popping away to follow orders. She could do with a nap. Harry, how did I survive the killing curse? Your bracelet that says best friends forever wouldn't let Voldemort take you from me. The person who gave you that bracelet thinks forever should mean forever. Father suggested completing our bonding now. Has your armor covering all your body? That was a conversation I could have done without having with your dad. Hermione was giggling at that when Luna and Sapphire stuck their heads in, both rushing into the room when they realized she was awake. Oh, Hermione, you're awake. We've got a rota going where we take turns checking to see if you were. I'd better go and tell Emma. Luna shot out of there, giving Sapphire a moment to talk. Once the girls got over the shock, they understood why you didn't tell them. I didn't want you worrying about it. I don't want you worrying about anything. Oh, and the whole goblins bowing to you might be back with a vengeance, but don't expect me to be doing it. Sapphire barely had time to hug Hermione before the door was flung open and their extended family began streaming in. The room was soon full, and Harry stood back to let everyone see Hermione was indeed all right. Watching Neville enter was just the icing on the cake. He might be leaning a little on Padma, but he would be back to normal in a day or so. Both Neville and Hermione would certainly be fit enough to attend the family meeting where they arranged this summer's holidays. Tonks and Hermione hugging settled the last of any unrest amongst the family. None of the four underestimated the crucial part she had played in ensuring they were all here tonight to talk about what happened today. Harry felt his father standing beside him and reached out to pull the goblin into a hug. "We have a fine family, Father, a family that is all here. I think this counts as a special occasion. Indeed, son, getting humans to appreciate our sense of humor is no small achievement." Watching as father and son held each other while they laughed their heads off was the best medicine Hermione could have. That was until Padma dropped the bombshell that she and Harry were getting married. While enjoying the impromptu party that had broken out in the stadium, Ginny wasn't the only one whose eyes continually scanned the path into Hogwarts. First sign of people appearing, Ginny was off and running. The wide grin on her face began to fade the closer she got, as Ginny noticed there were a lot less people than she'd been expecting, and just 2 of them had red hair. It was also hard to miss that none of them was celebrating or even smiling. She slammed into the twins at full pelt, only to discover their return hugs were just as needy as hers. "Where is everyone else? Why all the long faces? I thought we won, and everyone was fine." Fred tried to smile, but his heart wasn't really in it. "One question at a time, Jen. Dad, Bill, Percy and Penny are all working now. Can you ask Mum to make sure Jenny either gets home with the McDonald's or ends up at the Burrow? Bill had to go on one final mission and doesn't think he'll make it back to Hogwarts in time to pick Jenny up. Why can't you tell her yourselves? There's a great party going on." Seeing both twins shy away from the idea of a party, the entire group actually all reacted exactly the same. Had Ginny really worried? "What aren't you telling me?" After an involuntary shudder, George tried to explain their reactions to his sister. "Ginny, that was without doubt the worst experience of my life, and last summer an infirus chewed my ear off. We had to watch those bastards trying to kill our friends while we attacked the wards. Neville's screams while Lestrange had him under the Cruciatus is something I could have done without ever hearing. Roger had his arm around a shattered Fleur, his girlfriend only sparking to life when she spotted Gabrielle running toward her. As the sisters embraced, Roger added his 2 nuts worth. Hearing Harry roar when Hermione got hit by Voldemort's killing curse will give me nightmares for years. It was as if his heart had been torn out. The smallest redhead could hardly speak at that, her voice now barely above a whisper. "Sirius never mentioned that," he said. "Everyone was okay." "Everyone is, Ginny, or at least they will be. Bill told us Hermione's bracelet is some of the finest work goblins have ever produced. It has just about every protection enchantment possible on it. Even so, everyone was still surprised the first time it began to expand like Harry's armor. It shouldn't be able to do that." Fred now had Ginny in his arms, offering his sister some much-needed comfort. "The killing curse hit that golden armor, and we're taught only physical objects can block that curse. Hermione's armor saved her life, Ginny, though she will need to get pieces of it removed from the wound on her shoulder. Bill also said that's at least the second time Hermione's armor has saved her. Needing to have armor save your life twice before you were 16 was not something Roger wanted to contemplate. At least now we know the reason behind all that training and why they have been a little strange recently. Imagine knowing that was coming to face you. I also can't think of any other group who could have pulled that off. We 4 will ace our NET defense practicals, but those 4 are in a whole different league from us." George had the last word, though. They needed to be. As Severus followed the weary group up toward the castle, his mind couldn't help but drift back to the last time celebrations were held over Voldemort's defeat. He didn't celebrate that day either. He also understood exactly how Harry felt when the Centurion thought Hermione was dead. Severus had felt as if his heart had been ripped out his chest on that terrible Halloween Lily had been murdered. The difference here, however, was Hermione hadn't died, and she clearly returned Harry's feelings with as much love and passion she could. He'd made a promise to the woman he loved that very same Halloween Severus Snape would do his best to avenge her death and look after her son. Today he'd upheld both of those promises. Her son was safe and Voldemort was no more. Dumbledore was surely finished too. Everyone was now free to get on with their lives. Both Black and Lupin had already married well. It was time for Severus to break from the past and begin living in the present. He already had an offer from Augusta to teach here again next year, as well as a position waiting on his return to Gringotts. Severus would take the first few weeks of the holidays to see what he wanted to do with his life before he made any decisions. Just having those decisions available to him meant he was already in a better place than he had been for many, many years. With so many people involved in the battle and all the spectators in the Hogwarts Stadium, news of Voldemort's final demise quickly spread around the country. The next edition of the Daily Prophet was still eagerly anticipated though, especially as Rita Skeeter was rumored to have been at the scene of the battle. Neither Rita nor their daily newspaper disappointed. The readers actually got a lot more than they had bargained for. The picture on the front page cranked up the drama from the instant they unrolled their newspaper, an unconscious Hermione being carried on a stretcher by 4 centurions, Harry, Dan and Barchoke at her side. Clearly visible in the background were 3 auras standing guard over Voldemort's dead body. As if that picture wasn't iconic enough on its own, Rita's headline took it to another level. The girl who lived. That particular headline dispelled any remaining doubts the country had about this witch one day marrying their hero. They were obviously fated to be together. Rita's article then went on to give a practically spell-by-spell account of the battle, especially how the 3 terrorists were dealt with before explaining exactly what had saved Hermione's life. She also painted a fuller picture of the battle by including a lot of the background action, describing how auras had tears running down their cheeks as they tried their utmost to get Voldemort's wards down. Watching those 5 brave people fight and not being able to intercede went against everything they stood for. Frank Longbottom having to be restrained for his own safety while Bellatrix Lestrange used the torture curse on his son was understood and heartfelt by every parent reading Rita's compelling words. She also described how over 100 warriors began physically attacking those same wards with goblin steel as Miss Granger fell, desperate to avenge her. This might go some way in accounting for their wild displays of jubilation on discovering she had survived. Miss Granger is clearly a well-loved figure within the Goblin Nation. Rita also had quotes that other journalists would kill for. The Bulgarian Minister of Magic was magnanimous in his praise for the efforts he had played a small part in here today. Last summer, like the rest of the world, I was shocked and appalled at the horrific attack after the Quidditch World Cup. The British Ministry of Magic and our friends from the Goblin Nation have been methodical yet relentless as they pursued these 3 murderers. What you witnessed here today was the result of almost 9 months of careful planning, reversing Voldemort's trap and then finally ending it at Bannockburn. I perfectly understood the need for secrecy. I myself only becoming aware of this operation due to Minister Fudge needing my assistance with a matter regarding Albus Dumbledore. I don't want to say any more about that, but I will say Victor Crumb and I were honored to participate in justice being done on behalf of our fellow countrymen. Borislaw knew his final remark would be popular. He just didn't realize that everyone else would have to follow suit, not that they wouldn't want to anyway. When I return home, I shall be recommending to my government that these 5 heroes receive recognition from the witches and wizards of Bulgaria for the crucial part they played here today. Cornelius and Ragnok echoed the same sentiments, including looking at rewarding the heroes of the hour. Amelia, though, had something a bit more substantial to say. She didn't want there to be the slightest doubt about what happened here today. What is already well documented is that these 4 teens have extra training 4 days a week. What is not so well known is that, for the last 2 years, their training has been identical to that afforded to trainee auras. Their tutors and I have been so impressed with them. Miss Granger, Miss Patil and Mr. Longbottom have been awarded the rank of Henry Auras. All will be able to wear aura dress robes when accepting any awards. Harry is of course a centurion, though my department would certainly be blessed to have any of those 4 working there. Rita promised that future editions of the Daily Prophet would have full details of how this plot of Voldemort's was discovered, what steps were taken to overcome Voldemort's scheme, and the part Albus Dumbledore played in aiding the Dark Lord. This guaranteed these future editions would sell every copy printed. The paper's owners had literally begged Rita to return, offering her any position she wanted at the profit. With her growing reputation and rapidly swelling vault, Rita took great pleasure in turning them down, then screwing even more gold out of them for her future exclusives. It was a subdued Hogwarts Great Hall, who read what their fellow students had faced yesterday. It was beginning to dawn on them just why the 4 friends and 2 champions who had fought to bring Voldemort's wards down didn't want to talk about it. There were no Hogwarts lessons today, Augusta and Minerva taking the view that the students would have been almost impossible to teach today anyway. Their minds were clearly on other things, or other people. Augusta was also down 3 professors, the extended family all staying in London last night. She wanted to be there herself but had a school to run. Augusta was also receiving constant updates from the family, indicating everything was going to be fine. The family meeting was planned for Sunday. She could wait until then to hug them all. Just knowing everyone had survived this time was enough for Augusta. Hermione left the Goblin medical facility on the Friday evening, her arm in a sling and warnings about overtaxing herself ringing in her ears. The plan was to stay in Gringotts for a couple of nights. The healers wanted to check on her for the next few days anyway, attend the family meeting in Hogwarts on Sunday before returning home to Crow's Nest. All 4 students agreed to give the last week at Hogwarts a miss. Padma, Neville and Hermione had sat their potions. OKWL the week before. Hermione's wand and writing arm would be in a sling for most of that week anyway, and Neville was still getting odd bouts of the shakes. The couple had taken down Rookwood and then Padma parted Lestrange from her arm. There were now more important things to be dealt with between them than being inside the castle for the final week. As Harry and Hermione sat in Father's apartment, Jamie happily sitting on Harry's lap with his sister right next to them, it was time to discuss the first subject of importance. All 3 parents were pleased to see the subject in question totally catching the couple out. I have spoken to Dan and Emma to explain my and the nation's position on your relationship. You are both considered adults in our society, adults who chose to complete their bond. If you hadn't taken that action, we would have lost the daughter, sister and wife, who means so much to all of us here. In my eyes, and the eyes of our people, you are mates, husband and wife, married. While you are inside Gringotts, you will be treated as such. Hermione didn't know it was possible to be embarrassed and excited at the same time. She looked to Harry, but her mate appeared to be in a different world. Jamie was chatting with his big brother as only a toddler can, his little fists wrapped around 2 of Harry's fingers as he pulled that hand around and giggled. Harry seemed as enraptured as Jamie was. His mind, though, was in a different place and a different time. Father, how did you go on? When I thought my Hermione was gone, there was nothing here for me anymore. I would have gladly gone with her. I don't think I could have continued without her. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the room, only Jamie seemed unaffected. Barchoke struggled to answer his son. When my mate passed away, I had a newborn son who needed me. When he then left a few days later, I was an empty shell. I did my best for Gringotts and my clients, but I was simply going through the motions. That all changed the day you appeared on my desk. I suddenly had a son who needed me again. The goblin's gaze shifted slightly to Hermione, all there seeing the unshed tears in the corners of Barchoke's eyes. I know you are truly my daughter, because that feeling returned with a vengeance when you fell. A large part of me was missing again, only to be repaired by Harry screaming for a healer. I am not ashamed to say Dan and I clung to each other like a couple of scared little tots who were afraid of the dark. That continued right up until we got confirmation from the healer that you had survived. Then things got a bit crazy. Dan wasn't the only one wiping moisture from his eyes. I was jumping up and down like mad while hugging Ragnarok. Only his guards doing the same prevented me being beheaded. Apparently our girl here is something of a celebrity in the nation, a well-loved one at that. Taking a deep breath, he then continued with what he wanted to say. Your mother and I have been talking about the marriage issue too. The only thing against us accepting this outright is the age we know both of you currently are. Since you certainly behave and physically appear older, we have decided just to ignore the numbers. Having witnessed what happened on that battlefield, I can certainly understand Harry not wanting to be parted from Hermione for the foreseeable future. Rather than have you sneaking about behind our backs, we give you our blessing, though the wedding next summer will still go ahead as planned." This was soon confirmed by Emma. "I know you are both sensible and have major plans for your future. Let's just make sure Jamie is a good bit older before you make him an uncle." Harry kissed his brother on the forehead before carefully leaning into Hermione and capturing her lips. He'd always intended spending the night with Hermione, but here they were being given oh so precious permission by their parents to do so. "I don't really know what to say, except thanks." Dan summed it up for all three parents. "In a choice between a new baby or another battle, we'll take babies every time. Please you two, my heart couldn't take going through that again. No more battles. Dad, it's over. I have no intention of fighting any more battles. I still hope to keep our morning training up though. It should also help me get this shoulder back in action. I'm pretty sure we're finished with hammering ourselves 4 times a week." However, Harry agreed with his mate. "I hope the only battles we fight in the future are diplomatic ones. We've been taught you only fight when there are no other alternatives. It's going to be father's and then my job to make sure it never comes to that again." Now that was something all of them could accept and readily agree on. It wasn't the pain from where her arm was now missing that had Bella in such a state, nor was it the loss of her mate and their master. Bella was certain she would be joining them soon. No, it was the uncertainty over her beautiful baby boy that had her climbing the walls with anxiety. She'd known Augustus was dead before she'd been stunned. Just the demeanor of those who woke her in this cell told Bella their master had suffered the same fate. The instant she regained her senses, Bella began reciting Marvolo's location, irrespective of what question she was asked. The truth serum had soon followed, with Bella spilling every secret she knew, though she fought it to keep repeating her baby's location. Then nothing. Apart from passing food and drink into her cell, she'd had no contact with anyone. Shouting the instant the hatch opened brought no results either. Bella was going crazy thinking of her little Marvolo, hungrily crying for his mummy and no one attending to him. Bellatrix Lestrange was a cruel, sadistic bitch of a witch. She was far more likely to be proud of that fact, rather than attempt to deny it. Bella thought the torture she was undergoing at the moment was worse than anything she'd ever dished out to her hapless victims. This not knowing the fate of her baby was killing the doting mother a piece at a time. The cell door opened to reveal Mad-Eye, a black aura, and her pink-haired niece. "You're coming with us. Please believe that if you try anything, you'll be missing another limb when it's time for your sentence." Bella certainly believed Moody wouldn't hesitate to do something like that. She couldn't resist having a verbal pop at her niece, though, as they walked along the corridor. "You are still too weak to win this war. Using stunners in a fight just emphasizes you don't have the stomach for this battle." Tonks, however, was more than ready for her aunt. She also knew what was to follow here today. "When a schoolgirl can cut you down with her blade, I thought a stunner was appropriate. I also stopped that schoolgirl from finishing the job, purely because I didn't want Padma having your death on her hands." The couple had already dealt with Rookwood, and the Longbottom family would have cherished their newest addition even more if she had put her blade through your chest too. "I just thought the ministry should deal with vermin like you. It's actually what they pay me for." All three auras could see Bella was desperate to attack Tonks for that. It was never going to happen though. With her remaining arm attached to the restraining belt around her waist, that option for retaliation was not available. Her ankles were also shackled, a 15-inch tether meaning she could move no faster than a shuffle. With a trio of wands on her, Bella wouldn't be doing anything they didn't want her to do. She was led into a room and fastened securely to a chair. Moody couldn't resist a parting comment as he and Shaq left Tonks with her. "If I had my way, this wouldn't be happening. You never showed your victims the merest scrap of mercy. You shouldn't be receiving any now. The minister says that's why we're better than you and why we won in the end. Personally, I would rather see you die without knowing, taking that anguish to your grave. That might be because I've seen enough of the poor bastards who you sent to theirs, or maybe it's time for me to retire before I become like the people I hate the most." Tonks stood with her back against the wall, ignoring her aunt's taunts, and waiting for the fireworks to begin. She didn't have long to wait. Elspeth Parkinson entered the interview room, with Sissy's arm around her waist and a toddler in her arms. It was like a bolt of lightning passing through Bella. "Marvelo, my baby. Mummy's here, son. These murdering bastards killed your father, but Mummy's still here." Elspeth held the sleeping child lovingly in her arms. He'd been spelled to nap so as not to cause the toddler the slightest hint of distress. "He's not your son anymore, nor is that despicable name still attached to this beautiful baby boy. This is Bruce Parkinson, our son." That Sissy bent to lovingly kiss the baby's head, before then doing the same to Elspeth's lips set Bella off like a rocket. "I will not have my gorgeous boy raised by a couple of witches. I don't give a shit how pure your blood is. My son will need a strong male in his life if he's one day going to rule this country." "Oh, I agree, Bella. Our little Bruce is gorgeous. We called him Bruce after the statue your master was finally defeated under. They burned Tom's body just where it fell. Bruce here will also have plenty of strong male figures in his life to aspire to. Draco, Sirius and Severus are just the first three that sprung to mind. He's about the same age as Astrid Black and Jamie Granger too. We're hoping all three can be friends." "Sissy, you bastard. I was forced to marry that poofter, Rodolphus, while you got stuck with Lucius. It was only Augustus that taught me what a real man was like. Don't do this to my son. We don't need another poof in the family. I certainly don't want my boy mixing with the wrong sort either. Creatures and mudbloods." This had Sissy shaking her head. "He will grow up loved with two mothers, a brother and a sister. His sexuality will be something for Bruce to decide when he's older. We didn't get to choose who we loved. I guarantee he will get to make that choice for himself, just as he will get to choose who his friends are too." Elspeth glanced at Sissy before addressing Bella again. "You tortured my husband to death, and I hated you for it. In his own way, Edmund Parkinson was a good man. You took my husband from me. Now I've got your sister and your son. I'm happier than I've ever been and certainly think I got the better of the deal." Tonks then really stirred the cauldron. "Did you know your beloved master had set the wards around your son to fail if Tom died? Bill Weasley led a team of curse-breakers, warriors and auras to your hideout just in time to stop a bloody great snake eating that baby. It was in the corridor leading to Bruce's room when the warriors made short work of it. My mother and Aunt Sissy are his two closest living relatives. The ministry have already awarded custody of Bruce to Sissy and Elspeth, two widows who have paid a high price for this war." Tonks wasn't sure if her aunt had heard a word she said. All her attention was focused on the baby in Elspeth's arms. Bella was now struggling like a maniac in her futile attempts to get free, foaming at the mouth as her promises of retribution against those who would harm her son got darker and darker. Sissy led Elspeth and the still sleeping Bruce out the room before glancing over her shoulder at the thing her sister had become. "I won't be at your sentencing, Bella, so this is goodbye. I'll leave you with my promise to look after your son and love him as if he were my own." When Moody and Shaq returned, they were left with no other option but to stun a now crazed Bella and levitate the unconscious witch back to her cell. Seeing her condition drew a smirk from Mad-Eye. "Perhaps I was wrong. It looks like this bitch got a dose of her own medicine after all. Now all that's left is to give her an overdose of Veritosum tomorrow. Isn't there going to be a trial?" "Tonks, she's already had the death sentence passed on her before you took her down. We have enough confessions of torture and murders to see that sentence carried out a dozen times over. Tomorrow is nothing more than a public execution." Seeing this troubled the young Aurora, Shaq tried to put her mind at rest. "This isn't like Sirius Black, Tonks. This piece of shit is really guilty. I personally heard her confess to cutting a little girl's throat, just because her last name was Potter. She also butchered Edmund Parkinson and Harry's aunt. We don't need the entire country hearing that. I wish I'd never heard it." Dumping Bella on the little bed in her cell, they removed the restraints and left her there. Tonks also decided she wouldn't be there tomorrow when justice was finally done. This would be her goodbye to her crazy aunt. She had already arranged that as soon as the trials were finished, Tonks was going on extended leave. With the Hogwarts term finishing at the end of the week, Remus would be free then too. Tonks had never looked forward so much to a summer in her life before. She also hoped to be pregnant by the end of it. Arthur always seemed to be busy with his new position. He may have gotten a large raise in salary, but he was having to work bloody hard for it. That he actually loved the work he was now doing meant Arthur hadn't enjoyed himself this much in years. He and Bill were briefing members of the Muggle government on how the battle had gone, and that the Potter killers were no more. There were copies of the Daily Prophet spread around the table, but all eyes were glued to the Goblin viewer displaying Ragnarok's memory of the fight. Bill had to adjust the volume control to a lower level when the Goblins discovered Hermione had survived. As the memory faded, eyes moved to Graham Cole. "I think there are a few of us at this table who now owe you an apology, Graham. I'm sure I wasn't the only one who wondered if your report on these supposed kids had been magically enhanced. It was hard to tell from watching that memory which one of the 5 was the Aurora." After a few nods of agreement, their attention returned to the Weasleys. Her Majesty's government would also like to offer an unreserved apology if we suggested either of your governments were in any way complacent in using what we considered children to fight this battle. Graham's report highlighted this couldn't be further from the truth. We just got to graphically witness that here today. Even with the foreknowledge that they all survived, that was still incredibly difficult to watch. A few hears were followed by a question. "Why did you ask us for help with technology when that viewer sitting there is more advanced than anything we possess? Being able to store and replay a memory is a wonderful invention." "This is Goblin device," Bill said. "As a people, they have a national archive of memories going back centuries. That does not take into account families who keep their own generation after generation. History is very important to the nation. They treasure it and teach it to the following generations. The young man you saw fighting there, Harry Crow, intends to attend one of your universities to study history and politics. His fiancée hopes to attend the same university to study law. Padma will apprentice under the nation's most prestigious potions master. While I don't think Neville had looked past the battle all 4 knew was coming." Stopping for a drink of water, Bill took a moment before continuing. "None of those 4 chose this. Voldemort is the one who believed in the prophecy and went after Harry, killing both his parents in his first attempt to murder him almost 14 years ago. Harry told his 3 friends the danger they might be in the first week he met them. All 3 wanted his friendship, so accepted the dangers. I have been teaching those 4 every Saturday and Sunday for the last 4 years. If there was any way I could have taken their place inside those wards, you have my solemn word that's where I would have been. Those 4 are like family to me, and family means everything to us." His father's hand on his arm stopped Bill saying any more. "You'll have to excuse us if we get rather emotional. We lived what you just watched, and didn't have the benefit of already knowing the outcome. Myself, 4 of my sons, and a young lady who will soon become my daughter-in-law were all stood there pouring everything we could into bringing those wards down. Penny actually fainted from relief on hearing that Hermione was alive. She was their prefect at the boarding school for 3 years, holidayed with them, and now works for Harry's father. This whole thing is very personal to us, but we're here to do a job." It was Arthur's turn to need a drink of water before he could continue. "We asked for help specifically with technology. None of these 3 would know, therefore wouldn't guard against. Harry actually came up with a solution that worked brilliantly. We understood why the offer was withdrawn, but as you clearly saw, this was not an option we entered into lightly. Most of our people are celebrating the defeat of this Dark Lord. That does not include anyone who witnessed the battle. We all know how close we came to losing someone very dear to us. Had Hermione fallen, our 2 governments would have been in mourning. That's how close we came to losing. Make no mistake, defeating Voldemort and losing any one of those 5 would not have been a victory. We can all see that you have had a traumatic few days. Unfortunately, I am just about to add to that. Her Majesty is most anxious to hear how this went. I would ask if you could repeat your presentation for her." Neither Arthur or Bill felt they could refuse, which was why 2 Weasleys were soon in a government car and making the short trip to Buckingham Palace. The story that the Potter killers were no more broke in the Muggle press on Sunday, the story that was reported essentially being the truth. These killers had set a trap for Lord Potter, but he and his security forces had reversed the trap and ended the conflict. While two of the trio of terrorists had been killed outright, the third was not expected to live past the weekend. Lord Potter's party had taken some injuries, but nothing too serious. Like the rest of the country and certainly most of Crawley, the Reverend Robert Richards studied the story intently. His intended sermon now lay forgotten as he scribbled down notes for a new one. This may be a national story, but it had touched Crawley. While the entire congregation had known the Dursleys and knew the Grangers, Robert now understood there would be a lot more to this story than what was reported here. He could also make a good guess just who those private security forces were. As he stood in church to begin today's service, Robert's entire face lit up as he noticed who just walked in the door. Too late, he realized why the group had deliberately arrived at this late time, obviously attempting to avoid attention. The Reverend Richards, staring at the door with a wide smile on his face, saw a few heads turning in that direction. A couple of gasps later and the entire congregation was facing the church doors. Harry was standing there with Jamie in his arms at Hermione's insistence. She loved him to bits, but his continual hovering to see she was all right had really begun to grate on her nerves. Just because her arm was in a sling didn't mean she couldn't still do things for herself. That Harry constantly blamed himself for her injury wasn't helping either. Giving him Jamie to look after allowed Hermione a break. It was also a solution that both boys were happy with too. Padma and Neville had come along as well, both liking the Reverend Richards. They were flanked by Dan and Emma, the trio of blacks, bringing up the rear. Knowing this group would have wanted to avoid attention, Robert started speaking before the congregation broke into applause or something just as stupid. "I was just thinking about you this morning and intended to lead the congregation in prayers for your safety. It would seem our prayers have been answered. Dan, Emma, Lord Potter and Lord Black, it's delightful to see you and your families again. Jamie and Astrid are getting so big." This drew all eyes back onto the Reverend. The fact he knew everyone who had just walked into his church was a surprise to all in his congregation. "We have of course known the Grangers for many years. Due to circumstances beyond their control, the family were unable to attend church. That didn't mean their church couldn't go to them, or should that be their minister. I have stayed in their beautiful home in Kinkosi, christening their son Jamie back in September of last year. I returned during the Christmas holidays to preside over the marriage of two family friends. Next summer sees a double wedding on the estate, Lord Potter and Hermione being one of the couples I'll join together that day. Let us all rejoice that they are once more safely back amongst us by singing the first hymn." They had almost reached the first chorus before the congregation got into its singing stride, so shocked were they at their Reverend's revelations. With Hermione sitting on one side of him, Sirius on the other, Jamie on his knee, and Astrid taking the same position with her father, Harry was very happy to be in church. He kept waking up during the night in a cold sweat, only discovering Hermione was laying right beside him and still breathing, allowing the possibility of sleep to return. Harry knew he was driving Hermione crazy, but both also knew he couldn't help it. They couldn't wait for all this to be over and then head for the island. Perhaps there he would be able to relax. After the service, all knew the interrogation would begin. While Dan and Emma were busy telling everyone they would be moving to Scotland permanently, the younger members of the family were answering different questions. "You're getting married, Hermione?" She thought for a second about the terrible joke Harry had coined and decided not to go there. Yes, Harry arranged the date with the Reverend Richards when he was up in Kinasi to christen my brother. August 4th next summer. The wedding will be on our estate. "What happened to your shoulder?" "Oh, I was shot in the shoulder. My body armor absorbed most of it though. The sling is to stop me using my arm before it's properly healed." This halted the questions for a moment. Harry standing beside her still with Jamie in his arms meant Hermione could cope with anything today. "So you're not coming back to Crawley?" "No, Kinkosi is our home now. After our wedding, we'll be searching to see what university we'll apply to. It's been nice seeing you all again, but we have a long journey in front of us now." With that, the Grangers' association with Crawley ended. They would certainly be keeping in touch with Reverend Richards. He'd already been invited to spend some time with them on the island, but there was nothing else here for them now. Dan, Emma and Hermione were all different people from when they lived here. Kinglesey was home to all of them now, something Jamie would certainly benefit from. The three older Longbottoms were at a different kind of ceremony. Bellatrix Lestrange was led into the sparse facility, the charges she'd been found guilty of read out before an overdose of Veritaserum was administered. Once she became unconscious, the murderer was taken away to die in her cell. So ended the life of the Dark Lord's last follower. Now all that remained were the trials of Umbridge and Dumbledore. Those would be far grander affairs, though, and, since the wards would allow them to enter, be held in the Wizengamot chamber. After Rita's explosive exposé today, neither Augusta, Alice, nor Frank would be surprised if their sentence was the same as the one Lestrange had just received. When they thought about it, none of them were bothered by that prospect at all. Dumbledore's image as a light wizard had been well and not destroyed.